Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the fantasy master Lothario himself, Gray Albright. How's it going over there, Gray?
What's going on, man? I is actually I know we started the Raz Slam. Actually, by the time people listen to this, the Raz Slam might be over. I don't know. I don't know what the schedule is like for when these pods come out, or how fast people will be drafting. I actually this past weekend, so I have drafts to discuss. This past weekend, I went to Florida for the labor draft. I'm in the 12-team mixed league, labor, and so this is funny. I'll keep this brief because I know this podcast is already going to be like pushing 3 hours. So anyway, so after my labor draft, the Sirius XM reaches out to me and they ask me if I want to come on to discuss my team. So I'm like, yeah, sure, cool, okay. So they're like, okay, we're calling you now. So I get on the phone and I'm at the hotel, and I go outside the hotel in order to get on the phone, so this way, I have some quiet or whatever, and no one comes up to me in the lobby or anything. So anyway, so I go outside to get on the phone with Sirius, and I'm talking to them about my labor draft. And as I'm like 2 minutes into discussing my labor draft, this woman comes up to me outside the hotel, and she's like, she wants to ask me. I can tell she wants to ask me a question, but I'm like on the phone, like I'm talking about my like pitching staff or something, like waving her off. I'm waving her off, and she's like following me now. So I'm on the phone, and she's like 5 feet behind me. Like, can I just ask you? Excuse me, like. And I'm like walking away from her as she's like yelling at me, and I'm like waving her off. Finally, I get off the now. At this point, we've traveled now like a good 100 feet with her behind me. Like, excuse me. I'm like, no. Oh, I'm mouthing to her, no, leave me alone. So anyway, so I get off the phone and she's like, oh, you think you're King Charles or something, huh? You can't talk to me? I'm like, lady, I was on the phone. Anyway, it's my labor. That's my mixed labor story.
Yeah, gotta love big cities, and the disrespect you can lay down without having laid down any disrespect whatsoever. You mentioned the Raz Slam, Gray. I know you're sitting on the ends, and
Yeah,
magic
man. Yeah,
magically had someone call you.
I'm at pick 12. I'm at the corner. I'm on pick 12 in the Raz Slam. Somehow Juan Soto fell to me, which was very weird for me. I don't really know. In a points league, I mean, I think people know it's a points league, but in a points league, I don't think Juan Soto should be falling to the 12th spot. I don't think Juan Soto should be falling to the 12th spot in any draft, let alone a points league. So yeah, somehow I got Juan Soto on the turn, and then I ended up with I took my second round pick right after Juan Soto. I took Bryce Harper. So I know as much as you liked my Juan Soto pick, I'm sure I offset that by taking Bryce Harper. So I know I've managed to disappoint you. Sorry, B Don.
Well, I mean, Harper, if you're going to take Harper early, this is certainly the format to do it. I'm guessing there's probably some people on the board at that point that I would have preferred, like Matt Olson, Jose Ramirez, Austin Riley, our boy Jordan or Devers. I'm even a pitcher potentially. But like I said, it's the right format for Harper, so it's fine. I don't have any issues with that. I went with Mookie Betts, Ozzy Albies, and Gunnar Henderson right off the bat. So two guys with double position eligibility, which helps in this best ball points format, and all guys that I like as well. So definitely kind of going about it with some position eligibility in mind, but that's really just because they've kind of fallen in my lap so far, not necessarily a huge part of the game.
Yeah. No, totally. All right, we have like a 4 hour starters podcast. You want to get to
Yeah.
it?
Let's go ahead and get into it. Let's talk about off the top here, Gray, how you approach pitching and why. I think we have very similar approaches and how we go about attacking pitching in most formats. I think in points, I might be a little bit more willing to go for pitching early, but that's kind of the format basis, not pitching. But why don't you go ahead and discuss how you approach pitching in roto formats, Gray?
Okay, so I'll give you an example versus because I've said this many times before. This is something I've gone over numerous years. I think actually now it feels like the majority of people are starting to come around to what I've been saying for many years. But anyway, I don't draft pitching high. I don't take a starter usually until around 50 overall, and that's dependent on the league. Obviously, if you're in a 12-team league, it's a little bit easier than a 15-team league. In a 15-team league, if you're at the turn and you won't get the pick again until like pick 60 or something, then you might have to take a starter in the early 40s, late 30s potentially. It depends on where you're picking. I like to take a starter at like around 50. So, give or take 10 picks, depending on like how deep or shallow your league. The shallower the league, the easier it is to find pitching on waivers, so the less likely you need an ace. The deeper the league, or like a draft and hold, then the more likely you're going to need an ace, in your draft. So anyway, with that said, I'll say this: like, if you were to look at just last year, and if you were to not take a starter before 50 overall, you could have had Sonny Gray, Justin Steele, Kodai Senga, Jesus Luzardo, and Chris Bassett as your five. That is basically all you would have needed. So, that's cherry picking names, obviously. But just like you could have cherry picked names in your draft last year, no one wanted these guys. I was, as excited as, people are right now yelling at their radios saying, oh, I wanted Justin Steele or I wanted Kodai Senga. Then you could have jumped his ADP by a good 2 rounds if you wanted those guys. They still wouldn't have been drafted anywhere near the top 50. And this is now, those are names from last year for this year. Those are names from last year, giving you an example. But that's what you could have done every year. Every year, it's the same story. It's like you literally, like, people look at like the drafts, for this year, and they're always like, well, you need to have a top starter. And then you look at the guys who are the top starters last year, and you're like, wow, there really aren't any. There's no guys last year. You could have had, like, I'm not saying Blake Snell was obvious last year going into the year, but you could have had him at no cost whatsoever. You can have him in real baseball if you'd like. If you have $10 million, you can actually have Blake Snell right now. But it's like this every year, without fail. There's always pitchers, and that's not even including in a shallower league. That's talking about just drafting pitchers. In a shallower league, in like even a 12-team mixed league, you can probably get away with drafting 2 or 3 starters and just picking up guys off of waivers and either streaming or potentially just picking up guys and holding them. That's also a possibility. But it's honestly, it's every year, it's the same story, man. It's just repeating myself. And like I said, briefly earlier, it seems like people are starting to come around to this because now you're not seeing as many starters go that early. It feels like, we'll talk about specific names, but it feels like there's about 2 or 3 starters going in the top 20-ish. And then most people are waiting until around like the pick 50 to get their first starter, which, I've been saying this for a long time. Like you can honestly, and then even if you have, if you get one starter in the top 50, then you don't have to get it. You don't have to get another start. You can get like one more starter in the top 100, your second starter, and then you could wait until like 120 to 140 overall to get your third starter. Then grab someone you like around 200 for your fourth starter. Then just like, by your fifth and sixth after 200, it's, honestly, there's so many guys available later, and it feels like it's like this every year. Like without fail, there's always guys coming out of nowhere and becoming top starters. So yeah, I've been saying this for years though. What's your thoughts, B-Dom?
I'm with you for the most part. The top guys are there for a reason. They are the most likely to perform up to standards, but pitching itself is such a it's so much more risky than hitters in regards to injury and all the factors that they're not in control of. A hitter steps up to bat, it's him and the fielders and, what the pitcher is going to do. A pitcher has to rely on the, 8 other people on the field to not screw it up. And he has to do everything right in, what is becoming more of a hitter friendly environment. So I get why they're there. But last year, the one overall, the clear number one pitcher by everybody's ranking was Corbin Burns. If you had Corbin Burns, that didn't go real well for the first half at least, and then he got it together in the second half. But like if you spit an early first rounder on him, it hurts your team quite a bit because you missed out on all of the potential for bats there. So if you take the number one pitcher early and he ends up the number one pitcher, fine. Like you get what you wanted, but there's a lot of risk there, and you can find it later.
Completely. And there's also like just the mere, just like logically, the best starter in baseball, even if Spencer Strider, he's number one on my rankings. He's number one for everyone. But even if Spencer Strider, who we went over in the top 20 overall podcast, even if Spencer Strider is the best Spencer Strider he can be, he's still only going to give you 4 categories. That's it. Wins, ERA whip, and Ks. For a 5x5 this is, obviously. So even if he's the best he can be, he's not giving you 5 categories like the top hitters will. Julio Rodriguez is giving you 5 categories. Spencer Strider is not giving you 5 categories. And then, as you just mentioned, his ratios and wins are kind of out of his control too. As we saw, Spencer Strider didn't even have a great ratios year. I mean, his whip was fine, but his ERA was not great last year. And he was still the number one starter because, that's just how starting is. Like he killed it in, he was solid in wins. He killed it in strikeouts. But, I'm not going to talk about Spencer Strider because we already have. But like even the best starters, like as you said, a lot of their categories are not even in their control. Like it's basically strikeouts and to a certain extent whip if a guy has good command. But for the most part, ERA and wins are almost entirely out of their control. ERA a little less so, wins completely. They have no control over wins. I mean, look at DeGrom has like 75 career wins. and he was one of the best pitchers for like 7 years straight. So yeah, I mean, it's just it feels like common sense, man.
Yeah, it feels like, with the way that pitchers pop up, there's just no reason to spend that early pick. I mean, Blake Snell, number 3 on the player rater last year, still unsigned, but like he was going outside the top 100. Zach Gallen was going outside the top like 70, 80. Zach Eflin was in like the 300s, 400s somewhere. Justin Steele was in like the 150 somewhere range. Like there are so many guys that pop up in pitching. There's also so many injuries that happen, especially if you're drafting early, like we tend to do in, drafting holds, and especially in like our competitions. We have the Slam, TGFBI, all those competitions. Like they tend to draft a little earlier. Putting your eggs in pitching early is just a little bit risky. And you're, like you said, you're only getting 4 categories at most out of these guys. Certainly, you need some starters. You need to find an ace, but then you kind of fill in around them depending on the depth of your league. I know we're already like 20 minutes in, and we haven't discussed a single guy. But with last year, obviously things changed. We had pitch clock, run rules, run check rules. Are you willing to give maybe more forgiveness on a slow start, or maybe if a guy had a bad finish? Like, are you willing to maybe give forgiveness on the back ends because of the changes? And then, I noticed in your write-ups, like you do have a theme here surrounding walks with the kind of the change as well. So I just wanted to give you that to talk about real quick. Try and keep this under a few minutes, but like it's an important topic to discuss before we get in here.
Yeah, no, completely. I definitely found myself looking at starters a lot different this year. As far as like, where I was ranking guys because of the pitch clock threw in a wrinkle where I think, I don't know, I don't really look at other people's rankings, so I don't know if other people are also thinking about this or have factored it into their rankings, but I really found myself looking at guys that have like, the better the command, the better the pitcher for me versus previous years where I was looking more at like if a guy can strike out like the side, he he basically ruled the world. If he had strikeouts was like number one for me. Now it's more about walks and a low walk rate. Whereas also, I've also said in the past, like K's minus walks is probably your number one bet for how to rank starters. Like if you're just looking at walks, if you're just looking at strikeouts minus walks, like the top 100 ranking for the guys who qualified for that, that's not going to be that far off from what a good ranking looks like for starters. Like I don't want to I don't want to give away the store here for free, but if you're just looking at starters and you want to know where you should draft them, not a bad place to look is just walks. Excuse me, strikeouts minus walks. Like that's pretty much. I mean, that's it, really. And then everything else is kind of like, cherry on top. Like whether a guy has, a new pitch, it's interesting. But I think it's common sense when you think about it, because it's like if a guy has a new pitch, but he's either A, not throwing it much, or B, he's not throwing it well, it doesn't really matter if he has a new pitch. Like it's irrelevant, kind of. It's nice if a guy is, his velocity is up, but does that equate to good results? Because unfortunately, for me at least, all I care about is the results. Like it's nice if a guy has, has more velocity or has a new pitch or went to drive line, whatever that means. That's all great. That's all well and good. But at the end of the day, what's the results? So, I mean, that's just, in general, how I approach the rankings. It really is, but really more so this year than any other year because of the pitch clock rules. It has become a lot about, like, if a guy can keep players off base because as we saw, once you let a guy get on with a walk, it could easily turn into a triple. So yeah, I'm trying to, for the most part, I want pitchers who are limiting base runners, and then if they have good strikeouts, great. I mean that definitely helps. It doesn't hurt if a guy can strike out the side and not even have to worry about base runners. But, if they do walk a lot of guys, they better have a lot of strikeouts to make up for that. So yeah, that's just in general my ranking sort of philosophies.
And I think K to walk ratio has always been a strong indicator. Certainly not everything. You can have like Aaron Nola last year had a very strong K to walk. Obviously, Aaron Nola's season not something you wanted to write home about, but
Yeah, that's. I mean, we can talk about that with Aaron Nola specifically, but it's like if a guy has a good strikeouts to walks and didn't have good results, then you have to dig in a little bit deeper and see why and see if that's correctable. Nola gave up a lot of home runs
yeah.
specifically.
To your point, though, 1 through 10, I'm just going to read them off real quick, and then we'll get into names from K to walk ratio. Spencer Strider, Kevin Gausman, Pablo Lopez, Zach Eflin, Freddie Peralta, Zach Wheeler, Garrett Cole, Jesus Luzardo, Zach Gallen, Luis Castillo. All those guys really, really good, and we're going to get to them here in just a second. So number 1 for you was Spencer Strider. We've already talked about him in the top 20. Number 2 is Garrett Cole. Last year, he had a 209 innings, 15-4 record, 2.63 ERA, 0.98 WHIP, 222 Ks at a 27% K rate and a 5.8% walk rate. You have him projected for 207 innings, a 16-5 record, 323, 102, and 234 Ks. This is maybe the first time since Garrett Cole got out of Pittsburgh that he didn't have a single month over 30% K rate, Gray. Velocity was down slightly as well. Are you worried about velocity and Ks here with Garrett Cole at all? Or
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I am a little bit. I'm not super excited about Garrett Cole. I'm not, going back to what I said in the opening. I'm not drafting Garrett Cole if push comes to shove. Even though push comes to shove for a guy who can shove, is that something? No. Anyway, even though I did draft Garrett Cole already, I I found myself in an auction draft and I had on my I'm in the war room. He's at like $40, and his ADP in auctions is like $42. I think I bid like $34 and I got him. I don't even know how that happened. Probably because of the room was filled with Razzball people, and I've told them not to draft starters for so long that I literally drafted Garrett Cole. But anyway, with that said, if I was in a snake draft, I would never draft Garrett Cole. A snake draft is a little bit more indicative of how one drafts because you can't, you're either picking a guy or you're not. Whereas an auction, you're just throwing out you're throwing out dollars that you would pay in theory, thinking you won't pay it for Garrett Cole, at least for me. But yeah, I don't like the numbers don't look good. The strikeouts are way down, like you said. Velocity was down, and yeah, I mean he's not in a great park. The team should provide wins, but I mean that's so fickle, Like I honestly, if I feel like Garrett Cole, for me at least, is like he's either on the verge of becoming not a good, not a great, not a top 10 starter anymore. So he's either on the verge of falling off, like we've seen many times. We've seen previous years these things happen at a certain point. Age catches up to a guy. Like look at Scherzer or Verlander. So either Cole's going to fall off or he's just going to repeat last year, which was totally fine. It's totally a fine year with just a slight uptick in ERA if there's neutral luck. So, the good thing with Garrett Cole and the reason why people pay for him, I would assume is because of the 200 plus innings, the 9.5 K per nine, the probably solid wins, and the usually solid ratios. So if you're the type to pay for Garrett Cole, like like I apparently am now, yeah, I would. I would avoid Garrett Cole in a snake draft for sure. And auctions, I would go less than his ADP, which I did and ended up with him. So anyway, I don't like Garrett Cole.
I mean, he kind of feels like the guy who slots in at 2 by default, just because there's nobody really pushing him that is a 200 inning, low ERA, low WHIP, high strikeout like guy that demands to be moved over him. I think a number of people would like to not have him as their number 2 starting pitcher, but again, you look around and it's like, okay, but who are you really going to put above Garrett Cole? He's consistent. Even in a dropped K rate, he was at like 28%, which is still very, very strong. You're getting, he's giving you 200 innings the last 2 years and 181 in the year before that. So, I mean, you're getting as consistent in production as you can. That being said, yes, there are some warning signs. The K rate, I don't expect him to climb up to like the 32, 33% or higher that we've seen from him before. But, a 27, 28% K rate is still perfectly fine. Moving on to Corbin Burns. Last year, he had 193 and 2/3 innings, 10-8 record, 339, 107, 200 Ks, 25.5% K rate, 8.4% walk rate. You have him down for 194 innings, 13-6 record, 3.27 ERA, 105 WHIP, and 209 strikeouts. Definitely struggled in the first half with a just under 4 ERA. K rate was down, walk rate was up. Second half, got the ERA under control, WHIP under control. Everything seemed to kind of line back up for the most part. But you can't just get rid of a full half of season baseball, or can you, Gray?
No. I don't. Yeah, probably not. I would say again. I mean, I'm not drafting him necessarily. I mean, I wouldn't. I wouldn't ever in a snake league. In a snake draft. Things happen in an auction. I'll never live down that Garrett Cole pick. Or at least in my own mind, I won't live it down. Yeah, you know, I would say it's interesting because the trade I think helps, right? Do you agree?
Oh, yeah. I mean, getting out
Yeah,
of
yeah. I mean,
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee was a bad park, so the trade helps. It's weird because the trade helps for the park, but the competition gets much harder. Facing the Yankees.
That's
He doesn't have to face the Orioles, I guess. So that's good. The Jays they're not a layup. I mean, they're better than NL Central teams. Like the
like
Jays and the Jades, yeah, and I don't know, maybe. But the Jays and the Red Sox are better than, I don't know. Maybe the Reds are good. I think
the Reds are good. The Cubs,
yeah, okay. The
bad.
Cubs are not bad. Okay, yeah. So that maybe the competition doesn't get that much harder, and the park does get better. But yeah, I mean, he wasn't good for a half a season. I mean, like you said. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not in on him. I honestly, if people people are drafting him now more aggressively than they were. I think his ADP has gone up a little bit since the trade. Maybe a full round it's gone up. I don't know. I mean, you look at his numbers and he had, what he had like a shoulder, I think it was. For the first half of the year, that is. He did bounce back, but not. I'm not a fan. I mean, his numbers don't look good. His peripherals, like for the season, don't look good. His Ks were down. His walks were up. He was a hair bit lucky too on Babbitt. So his ERA was actually at 3.39. His ERA was actually low versus his xFIP. I don't love Corbin Burns. I don't, I honestly like. I say this for other positions too. Like, I don't care if a guy does. Like, in theory, the guys who I'm not drafting can do fine, and I can still win my leagues by drafting guys who I like, because the guys who I like, in theory, will be good. So, I don't necessarily have anything against Corbin Burns, but looking at his peripherals and where he's being drafted, ADP wise, I'm not in on him. If he was going maybe, 3 or 4 rounds later, I could consider it. Like, if he was going around the George Kirby, Freddie Peralta area, yeah, I would consider drafting him. But where he's going and the red flags, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had a couple shares early in draft season of Burns because people really seemed off of him, and now that we've gotten into full on draft season, he's climbed quite a bit to where I don't get him anymore. He goes with the other top pitchers. I'm more in on him than it sounds like you are. In the second half, he adjusted the pitch mix back to kind of what he's always done, which is throw more cutters and not change ups. Every time he throws more changeups, it doesn't go well. It didn't go in well at the end of 2022. It didn't go well to start 2023. So I hope he's learned his lesson and just gotten rid of that stupid pitch. And if that's the case, then I have no problem with Corbin Burns, and I think he's going to do fine. Again, I'm not going to draft him because of where he goes, but I don't have any problem with him. And, if it wasn't for the walk rate, I might even move him over Cole. But Cole's always had like this elite walk rate. And Burns has always kind of struggled in that area if he's struggled anywhere. I mean, not necessarily struggled, but it's not been pristine like it has been with Cole, especially last year. Even once he got it together, it was still an 8% walk rate. So that's my only difference really between Burns and Cole, but I don't really have a problem with him. Number 4 is Zach Wheeler, had 192 innings last year, 13-6 record, 3.61 ERA, 108 WHIP, 212 Ks, just under a 27% K rate and a 5% walk rate. You have him down for 191 innings, 15-7, 3.31 ERA, 106 WHIP, 207 strikeouts. And this is one of the guys, and we're going to talk about this. It's going to be a consistent theme of why I asked about guys who struggled off the first half. Because Zach Wheeler was really good, but he did struggle in the first half and then got it together in the second half. I mean, obviously,
Yeah,
with it before.
right. Yeah, no, Zach Wheeler. Yeah, listen, I'm fine with him as far as ranking him where I did. I'm still not drafting him. In theory,
we can stop saying that. We know you're not drafting.
Yeah. I mean, no, I know, but I'm saying, like, I'm fine with him. If he were to fall to like 50 overall, yeah, I would draft him. Like I say in my rankings, like those are my rankings for starters. Assuming like if Spencer Strider was at like 50 overall and then each guy was ranked and each guy fell to like 51, 52, 53, I would draft them just as they're ranked. I just won't take them because of their ADP. With that said, for Zach Wheeler, I believe he had a shoulder issue in spring training last year. I think it's similar to what Braxton Garrett is dealing with now. So Zach Wheeler was a little bit slow coming out of the gate, and then he managed to pick up steam and was better in the second half. And I think he's fine now. I haven't heard anything, bad about him. It's actually, I was talking about being in Florida, during the opening and for labor. And I was in Florida and I was talking to some guys and, I was talking to someone about Lodolo. And anyway, with that said, what they were saying to me, a Reds writer, and they were saying that, like, pitching's just, it's hard for anyone. Like, even the best pitchers struggle to pitch. Like, even, like, throwing out the whole, like, they're only in control of the strikeouts and they don't really control the ratios and the wins. Throwing that out the window, it's just 100 pitches every 5 days. It's just a hard thing on your shoulder, on your elbow. your legs. It's a really difficult thing. One of the hardest things I think in sports. So it's like, Zach Wheeler is fine right now. His shoulder seems fine, but he did have an issue last spring training. So I like Zach Wheeler in general. I think his numbers look fine, but yeah, I mean, there's injury is, it's like in the rear view on the car. It's closer than it appears. So yeah, hopefully he's okay. Knock on wood if you have him. I wouldn't draft him.
I don't no problems with Zach Wheeler. We know he's going inside of where we're probably going to get him in most snake drafts. Number 5, which starts a new tier for you, is Kevin Gausman. He had 185 innings last year, 12-9 record, 3.16 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 31.1% K rate, 7.2% walk rate, 237 Ks. You have him down for 191 innings, 15-6, 3.12 ERA, 1.16 WHIP, and 228 strikeouts. I had this whole thing where I was going to be like, oh, doesn't Kevin Gausman belong up a tier? Like, who would have thought after 2019 Gausman would be a top 5 starting pitcher, and now he has shoulder fatigue and hasn't thrown this spring.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I was just saying with Zach Wheeler, as far as like shoulder issues in the spring, there's many different layers to how serious a pitcher's injury is. As of right now, as of the recording of this, Kevin Gausman sounds fine. He sounds like he's just taking it slow. And a lot of times with vet pitchers like Zach Wheeler, for instance, they know how to ramp up and they know what they need to do. And if Kevin Gausman only needs to throw like, one start in spring training towards the end of spring training to get himself ready for the season, then, hopefully he's fine. As of right now, as of the recording of this, Kevin Gausman sounds fine. He just sounds like he's taking it slow. We'll see. I don't know. With all that said, if he is healthy, I like Kevin Gausman. This is the point where I'm drafting at this, which is not very deep into the starters. Like I haven't, I'm not saying to punt like 20 starters. It's just basically the top 4 I'm out on. And then Kevin Gausman, I'm willing to, as long as he's healthy, I'm fine with Kevin Gausman. His numbers look really good. Like his splitter alone is just like I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he's got like an under 2 batting average against, I think, on his splitter. Like he is like Kevin Gausman is like he's basically he's like a number 1 starter, just minus the wins and the innings a little bit. Like he's more of a 175 inning guy versus a 210 inning guy. So that takes some counting stats away from the strikeouts and the potential for wins. So he's a little bit less on wins, a little bit less on strikeouts because of the innings, but in general, like he's so good, assuming he's healthy. Hopefully he is.
Yeah, and I guess you have him here 5. Is that factoring in the risk of the injury already, or is that kind of where you had him and you're fine leaving him here? Where is he falling for you or not?
No, no. As of right now, I haven't moved Kevin Gausman. If we hear like it's still like we're recording this on March 5th. If it's March 12th when this podcast actually comes out and he still hasn't thrown, or if there's bad news, like then at that point, then I might have to lower him. But as of right now, I mean, if you're drafting him, he sounds like he's just taking it slow as of right now. That's all I know.
I would agree with how it sounds. I still have dropped him in my rankings. I've basically dropped him 10 spots to like the 15, 16 area among pitchers. And that's kind of the line where I have like, these are the guys I want as my 1s. And then from there on, you start kind of the 2. If Kevin Gausman's your 2, A, you're in a great position if he's healthy. B, like if he gets hurt, it's not the end of the world if he's your 2. Like you can still find yourself a 2 somewhere along the way. Number 6 for you is Luis Castillo. Last year he had 885 innings, 12-9 record, 3.61 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 237 strikeouts, a 31% K, and a 7.2% walk. You have him down for 13-7, 3.28 ERA, 107 WHIP, 206 strikeouts, and 188 innings. I mean, pretty much the same thing I said about Gausman. Like after 2019, if you told us Luis Castillo was going to be up here this high in the rankings, we would have called you crazy. Velo was down a little bit, but the movement was up. So, I mean, same, and he had a great season.
Yeah, no, completely. Also, the park is so good. If you can, you'll, as we go along in these rankings, there's going to be there's a lot of good Mariners, starters, and the park doesn't hurt. It's like, it's basically the opposite of Cincinnati. Whatever's going on in Cincinnati, it's the opposite in Seattle. Castillo looks great. I mean, he's got, potential for 185 innings, 10 plus K per 9, solid walk rate, great park. He looks awesome. I think I might have drafted him. If I haven't already, I absolutely would. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I love Luis Castillo. I've always liked him, and now that he's out of Cincinnati, it's even better. And he's fully embraced the fly ball capabilities of his home park, and so that's just leading to better and better things because fly balls are the easiest outs in baseball. Number 7 is Freddie Peralta. Last year had 165 and 2/3 innings, 12-10 record, 3.86 ERA, 1.12 WHIP, 210 strikeouts, and just under a 31% K rate and just under an 8% walk rate. You have him down for 178 innings, 15-5, 3.52 ERA, 1.14 WHIP, and 224 strikeouts. 2.81 ERA in the second half. K rate climbed a bunch. Walk rate was down in the second half. Incorporated the changeup a little more in the second half. Everything looked good in the second half. Freddie Peralta's issues always been staying healthy and maybe some walks and all of that seemed to get a little bit better last year.
Yeah, I will say, like, I think if everything keeps falling the way it does in drafts, like Freddie Peralta feels like I said I would draft Kevin Gausman or Louis Castillo. Like I absolutely would, but in reality, well, at least before the injury concerns with Gausman. In reality, though, those guys were going before I was willing to take a starter. Like they're going in the top 30. Where Freddie Peralta feels like the first guy who I not only would want as my number 1 starter, but he also feels like the first guy who I absolutely could draft as my first starter. So more often than not, I feel like I'm in on Freddie Peralta at his price. Like he's going at a super solid, ADP around I think it's like 45 to 55 overall, which is a good range. He's a 220-ish strikeout guy with solid, like you said, his command has gotten a lot better, so his whip has been better. The walks are here or there. Who knows with the Brewers, but he is he feels like he could be in the discussion for a top 3 starter next year, and off of my board. But he feels like the first starter who actually has upside from where he's being drafted.
Yeah, he feels like Kevin Gausman is he's building to be what Kevin Gausman is, which is like 185 innings of really good high K, maybe slightly high walk pitching, and we just need to see I just want to see him do 180 innings. It's always been kind of an issue with him getting through a full season. 165 last year is nice to see. It's the step in the right direction. I need a 180 inning season from him. And that's why I think I have him just slightly lower than where you have him. But I've always loved me some Freddie Peralta. Finally paid off big last year because I'm just obsessed with strikeouts, and he gives you them in bunches. Number 8 is George Kirby. Last year had 190 and 2/3 innings, 13 and 10 record, 3.35 ERA, 104 WHIP, 172 strikeouts, 22.7% K rate, 2.5% walk rate. You have him down for 188 innings, 13 and 8 record, 307, 102, and 177 Ks. Great home park, doesn't walk anybody. Probably the lowest ceiling of anybody we've talked about so far, but also might have the highest floor of anybody we've talked so far.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I think he's absolutely like the highest floor and the lowest ceiling. Absolutely. I think he is in that, like, I'd be like his was his rookie year. Yeah, his rookie year he had a 3.39 ERA. Last year he had a 3.35 ERA. I would say that it's like I have him projected for 307. I wouldn't be shocked if it's anywhere from where my projections are, maybe three even to 3.4. Like it's really rare that you're able to pinpoint a guy's ERA so specifically. Like usually like there's a wide range of possibilities, but for George Kirby to be sitting in like a 3 even ERA to like a 3.4 ERA and like that solid of an ERA and just be sitting there as like probably his like downside and his upside, like that right there, that small little area of ERA, like that's really rare. Like even Freddie Peralta, who I just said I liked a lot, like he could be like a 2.5 ERA guy or a 4.25 ERA guy. Like let's be honest, like there's wide ranges of possibilities there. With George Kirby, I don't feel like there's any range of possibilities. Like it's like George Kirby is exactly who you think he is. Not necessarily incredible for strikeouts, gonna be really safe. And yeah, I like him a lot. I would absolutely draft George Kirby.
Yeah, it feels like if you want like the safety guy, this is who you're taking, and he may drop in drafts because he doesn't come with the upside. So yeah, definitely love me some George Kirby and a guy that may actually end up on rosters of mine. Number 9 is Pablo Lopez. Last year had 194 innings, 11-8 record, 3.66 ERA, 1.15 WHIP, 234 strikeouts, 29% K rate, and a 6% walk rate. You have him down for 186 innings. 14-9 record, 339, 109, and 216 strikeouts. Oddly enough, he was better on the road last year. I would never have thought I would say that. Whip's a little high, but other than that, that's about it. I mean, everything else is really, really nice here with Pablo.
Yeah, no, completely. Yeah, Pablo Lopez is a great example of like what I was saying in the opening, where it's like no one knows anything when it comes to starting pitching because there's so many ranges of outcomes for each of these guys, except George Kirby. But with Pablo Lopez, like he was going at such a reasonable price last year, and now he's bumped up like 70 spots in ADP from last year, roughly. I think he was like, I want to say he was around 110 last year, and now he's going in like maybe the 50-ish range. I keep saying it, but it's like there's going to be pitchers who are going in like the 120 range this year, who next year are going to be like the Pablo Lopez's of the world. So yeah, I like Pablo Lopez. Is he a lock for a top 10 starter year? I don't think so. just like last year, because last year he was like the 25th starter off the board, and now he's the ninth starter off the board for me in the top 10 of starters. So yeah, I like him. I think he's got 4 pitches. He actually throws a 5th pitch, but it's not a great pitch. But yeah, you only need 2 good pitches, and Pablo Lopez has 4. So it's like he's great. He's a 200 plus K rate. 200 plus Ks. Probably hopefully mid-3 ERA and should be solid for walks. So should be a solid whip guy. But yeah, I mean, there's hedging on both sides with the ratios.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe the only negative, if you want to call it, on Pablo is I don't know. I don't know where the room is to grow from last year, other than improving on the whip, maybe. Um, and even with everything he did last year, he was 17th among pitchers, starting pitchers on the player rater. So I love Pablo Lopez. That would be the only thing I have to say, though, in regards to kind of the upside on him. I feel like he's hit that upside already. So that again, that's very little to say. If he gives you what he gave you last year, you're still real happy. Number 10 is Zach Gallen. Last year had 210 innings, 17-9 record, 3.47 ERA, 1.12 WHIP, 220 strikeouts, 26% K rate, 5.6% walk rate. You have him down for 195 innings, 13-6 record, 3.33 ERA, 1.09 WHIP, and 202 strikeouts. This feels like the middle ground of Kirby and Pablo in regards to safety and upside.
Yeah, no, totally. Actually, Jeff, ex podcast host, ex Ralph, Jeff. I saw him in Florida at Labor, and he brought up a good point with Zach Gale, and that I had forgotten was he had what Senga has right now, torn or not torn, but elbow issues. I think a sprain, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I believe Zach Gallen had a sprain in his elbow and rehabbed versus surgery and eventually came back a year later. Which was last year. He was back for the second half of the previous year, but looked a little bit wonky. And then he was fully back last year. So, you could put that in your pipe and smoke it for as far as Senga goes. But with that said, I think there is the worry there that Galen still has that in his recent history. Hopefully he's fine. Obviously, I would draft him because last year he looked good, and he hopefully has the elbow issues in his past, and he's okay. But yeah, I mean, things happen. He feels safe though right now, so I'll agree with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I have him as my SP6, so I'm slightly higher on him than you. He just feels very safe, and he's going to give you everything you want across the board, with upside, because we've seen him have a better ERA, we've seen him have a better WHIP.
He has. I
Strikeouts are
have.
there.
Sorry, I just googled it. It was a sprain of his UCL 2 years ago. So that's for whatever that's worth. He rehabbed it, but yeah. And sprains are, it's like it's hard to say as far as Senga goes, but for whatever that's worth, Galen had it was a minor sprain in 2021.
Yeah, and it definitely affected him that season. Wasn't quite the same, but then the next year came back. So, like you said, maybe that has correlation to Senga, maybe not. It's hard to say with sprains because we don't know the severity. We're not really brought in. We only know what we hear from the outside. Next tier, number 11, Logan Webb, 216 innings last year, 11-13 record, 3.25, 107, 194 Ks, 22.8% K rate, 3.6% walk rate. You have him down for 205 innings, 13-7 record, 319, 106, and 186 Ks. Not a great April. Didn't really get out of the gate so well, but other than that, it was just fine. Velo was good, and he's not really a high velo guy, so Logan Webb seems very safe as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said in the opening, I really was trying to go for, good command guys in general. Like if you had good commands, you had a shot in my eyes. So Logan Webb is, he's absolutely, he's like probably, he's more George Kirby than he's Freddie Peralta. If we're comping guys, Logan Webb is, great command, okay strikeouts, good enough, not amazing, but good enough. He's in a great park, similar to George Kirby. Yeah, I mean he's very George Kirby esque. Going back to what I was saying as far as Pablo Lopez goes, with like, one year a guy is like drafted at 120, next year he's drafted at 50, he's still the same guy, really. He's just coming off a better season. And that's Logan Webb, like to a T. I remember specifically Logan Webb, I think was like not like I don't remember exactly, but it was in the general ballpark. Like Logan Webb was around my 21st starter off the board, and now he's my 11th starter off the board. What has changed between last year and this year for Logan Webb? Better results last year. That's really it. Like and maybe another year of solid, like under his belt was a solid year for like a little bit better strikeouts, a little bit better command. Not a ton though. That's what we're looking at with these starters. Like not a lot has changed. So like when you're in your draft and you see Logan Webb go off the board at like 50, 55 overall, and you're like, you're snapping your fingers and you're all shucks in yourself. Think about how like last year he was going off the board at like 100 and a 90 or so, 85 to 90 off the board last year. Like there's gonna be guys later. Like I don't know who I don't I'm I mean, we have the rankings, so it's like, but it's like there's so many ranges of outcomes. Like this year's Logan Webb might be Erie Perez, for instance, or might be Joe Ryan. And next year, Logan Webb may be like the 25th starter off the board. So it's like, there's so much buffer between these guys, like on how like dead set they are at being this good. Logan Webb is probably pretty safe to be, I don't know, I want to say like depending on his wins and ratios, he's pretty safe to be a top 25 starter. Is he a top 15 starter? Absolutely, possibly, but not necessarily. you know?
Yeah, and I mean, it is worth saying last year was harder on pitchers as a whole. So, part of it is Logan Webb being more consistent, showing another year of doing it. K rate went up a little bit. So that's always a nice little thing. Like I think going into last season, you kind of looked at the K rate, and anytime it's like under an 8K per nine, it kind of gets this reaction from the fantasy community like, I don't know if there's an upside there to give me what I need. But Logan Webb, with the many innings he puts in, even with a suboptimal K rate, still gives you strikeouts, which at the end of the day is what you want. We're not getting points for our ratios of strikeouts. We're getting number of strikeouts. So yeah, I have no problem with Logan Webb. And in regards to what you said to everything else, like, yeah, absolutely. Like, we'll have guys bounce up, some guys will bounce back. And yeah, last year there was a number of guys who bounced back given all the new pitching rules and everything, and it just being a harder year on pitchers because we went from a 3.97 league ERA in 2022 to a 4.33 ERA in 2023. I mean, added point 0.4 on the ERA. That's a big difference season over season in regards to, pitching as a whole. So, there's a little bit maybe just put on consistency this year, as you're mentioning, like the guys who aren't going to blow up and give up a single and then all of a sudden have two guys in scoring position all of a sudden. Number 12 is Jesus Luzardo. Last year had 178 and 2/3 innings, 10-10 record, 3.58 ERA, 1.21 WHIP, 208 strikeouts, 28.1% K rate, 7.4% walk rate. You have him down for 182 innings, 13-6 record, 3.41 ERA, 1.12 WHIP, and 214 Ks. He had an amazing first half. struggled in August a little bit, but then got it back together to finish the season out. The only thing I really saw in August was he threw more sinkers than four seamers. So he made that adjustment back and everything seemed to have gone fine. I don't know what caused that, but just had a really bad run of like four bad starts that make his August look real bad.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, if you get granular on some of these guys, you start to see stuff where it's like, well, if he had a better start in on August 3rd versus the 3 innings, 6 earned runs, he would have been a 3.1 ERA guy versus a 3.5 ERA guy. Like if you start like really digging in on things like that, you're like you see guys like jumping off the page and it's like, wait a minute, but that's how fluky ERA and to a certain extent whip is. It's like they're so fluky, these starts for like it's like anyway, with Luzardo specifically. So if you were to give him as many, like last year he had 10 wins, if you were to give him as many wins as Clayton Kershaw had, which is a whole 3 more wins, okay, 3 more wins, and Luzardo would have gotten $4 extra on the player rater, and he would have moved from the 28th best starter last year to roughly the 18th best starter last year, around the same as Pablo Lopez and Corbin Burns and Kodai Senga. So Luzardo was 3 wins away from being a top 20 starter last year. For some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason, no one's looking at Luzardo like he's a number one starter this year. It is like crazy to me. Like I'm able to get Freddie Peralta and Jesus Luzardo in like 12-team leagues without even really trying very hard to draft starters. Or in a 15-team league, I can get them. Like you can get Freddie Peralta and Jesus Luzardo and be totally fine for pitching versus like, the guy who takes, it's honestly, it's not even that different than like the guy who takes Spencer Strider and then waits and takes like Tanner Beebe or Bobby Miller or Grayson Rodriguez. Like that person has probably the same amount of pitching points as the person who I'm describing who takes Freddie Peralta and Jesus Luzardo. And Jesus Luzardo is like so reasonably priced in drafts. I haven't had ADP open this whole pod. I should
So
I should
in 87th overall
Okay, yeah,
in
so
the
that
last
helps.
like 3 weeks.
Right. Yeah, okay. So I want to make sure I'm not talking completely on my ass. Yeah, so
No,
Freddie
he's going
Peralta,
32nd pitcher off the board right now.
yeah, so Freddie Peralta is going at 60 overall, and Jesus Luzardo is going around 90 overall. Like, I don't get it. I don't like Jesus Luzardo for like last year. Jesus Luzardo was, let's see, he was on the player rater. He was 96 overall on the player rater. So he's going around where he was last year. So again, if he would have had 3 more wins, which is really nothing, I get it. The Marlins aren't going to give him a ton of run support. I understand that. But if he were to have 3 more wins, and wins are really fluky, he would have been around the 70th best guy on the player rater. Instead, he's 96. So he is going at ADP, the same place he showed up on the player rater last year. So that's assuming Jesus Luzardo just repeats. You're talking about a guy like one of the best pitchers in baseball who's only 26 years old, and he's just going to repeat in Miami? Like, what? Like, he's only in like his third full season of like full season of pitching. So, like, not getting better? Jesus Luzardo? Anyway, I love Jesus Luzardo, obviously, and his price is so reasonable. I mean, like you could, as I say in my rankings, you could wait on a starter. I tell people to draft one around 50 overall, but you could wait until 90 overall and take Jesus Luzardo as your first starter and probably be totally fine. Like I was saying in the opening about starters who weren't in the top 50 and you would have been fine with, like when I was talking about Justin Steele and Kodai Senga, I mentioned Jose Luzardo then, and I'll say it again. Jose Luzardo at 90 overall, you could draft him as your first starter and you'll probably be totally fine. You take like a Chris Bassett, and then you and then you take like a Merrill Kelly, and you'd be okay. I mean, honestly, you would be. But people like to have the security blanket of a so-called quote unquote ace. But Jesus Luzardo is that.
Yeah, I am among those people who like to have the security of a so-called ace. But it also depends on the draft because I've certainly been in more than one draft this year where pitching went so fast and furious off the bat that I just sat it out. And like you said, you come in around like the Luzardo, you know, Sonny Gray, Zach Eflin range, and you just kind of build from there with depth and with innings, and eventually you get to the numbers that you were looking for. And you've built all your offense already in the front end, so while everybody's chasing their offense on the back end that you've already stacked, you can go ahead and take your pitchers because like missing out on Lars Nootbaar doesn't hurt as much as missing out on Nolan Jones. Like one is not the same as the other here. So just think about this as you're building your teams out. And if it goes too heavy pitching, be willing to adjust and go heavy bats and take all that. Number 13 is Logan Gilbert, who I love. Last year had 190 and two-thirds innings pitched, 13-7 record, 3.73 ERA, 108 WHIP, 189 strikeouts, 24.5% K rate, 4.7% walk rate. You have him for 194 innings, 13-6 record, 3.46, 109, and 190 Ks. His velocity actually got better as the season went on. I love me some Logan Gilbert, and I think if anything, the ERA was high last year. It's probably coming down.
Yeah, no, completely. Like if you were to put Logan Gilbert above George Kirby in your rankings, it's hard to argue against it. I mean, he didn't have Logan Gilbert didn't have a great ERA last year, but he was also kind of unlucky. It's just and Logan Gilbert is going at 70 overall. 70 overall, man. Like at ADP, I get it. People want to have the comfort of the Spencer Striders and the Corbin Burnses, but for Corbin Burns to go 50 picks before Logan Gilbert, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, Logan Gilbert to me feels like an ace, and he's going at 70 overall. That feels like an ace. I don't know. I like Logan Gilbert too. I don't know. Whatever Seattle's doing with their pitching, keep doing it because it's almost like the what should we call it? It's almost like Seattle got news ahead of time that the pitch clock was gonna really put a lot more emphasis on guys with good command because whatever Seattle's doing, man, they're doing it exactly how you want it done when it comes to pitching. So yeah, I love Logan Gilbert. Let's move on.
I do too. I have him. I have him as a top 10 pitcher for me. I love him. Number 14 is Tariq Skubal. Last year, 80 and 1/3 innings pitched, 7-3 record, 2.80 ERA, 0.90 WHIP, 102 strikeouts. That is a 32.9% K rate. He had a 4.5% walk rate. You have him rejected for 154 innings, 10-8 record, 309, 102, and 183 strikeouts. Only threw 80 last year. has thrown just under 150 back in 2021. It's we you kind of tagged this earlier. It's kind of the new spring tagline for pitchers, and as fantasy analysts, we joke about it. He went to Driveline, but seriously, Driveline is probably better than Detroit at developing pitchers, since we've seen them develop at least like 6 pitchers in the last decade, and we've seen Detroit develop none. Just
Hey,
saying.
don't take Rick Porcello away from Detroit, man.
Did they develop Rick Porcello? I feel like they
Yeah.
didn't really develop Rick Porcello. It's like giving
No,
them credit for Skubal when it's really not. Like Skubal's like, I'm just not gonna be here. I'm gonna go somewhere else and do my thing, and then I'm come back and be good for you. Is that cool?
Yeah, no, I'm joking. Yeah, they haven't. Detroit really hasn't developed anyone since Justin Verlander. that was like 20 years ago. Maybe you can give them Max Scherzer, which was also like 19 years ago. Anyway, Skubal, I think at this point, because it's more interesting for me, at least from my perspective, it's more interesting to talk about like fantasy, because this is a fantasy podcast, right? So I look at what's going on in like with ADP versus what's going on with the pitcher. And right now, it feels to me like Skubal's getting bumped up. His helium feels like it's going up higher than maybe he's really worth. I like Skubal, so don't take that the wrong way. Like, he is the 14th starter for me off the board. I would absolutely draft him if he were around, but he's going like, I feel like he's going to be as high as in the 30s by the time, the main event comes at the end of March. Like, Scooble is getting some serious helium. Like, he's going way above, like he's going 30 spots above like Logan Gilbert, who I have ranked in front of him. So I like Scooble. I don't know how many innings you're gonna really get. Like, if you give him, I projected him for 154 innings. Honestly, it feels optimistic because like we haven't seen that would be a career high for him. So hopefully he gets 150 innings. Realistically, 135 innings might be honestly more realistic. If he throws a 11 plus K per nine again with a 1.5 ish walk per nine, then it's going to be hard to deny him being a top 10 starter. Like his peripherals look incredible. His stuff looks really good. I like Scooble a lot, but for your first starter off the board, if you're taking him, you're taking a little bit of risk.
And he is definitely climbing. I have him ranked where you have him. I have him ranked where ADP has him among starting pitchers. I have not gotten him in a single draft that I've been in with fantasy analysts, and that's pretty much all the drafts that we do. Like, I haven't gotten him in a single one. It's impossible to get him because he just comes off the board so early and ahead of guys that I like more, that I think are providing maybe not the upside of a Skubal, but like very similar in regards to once you compare the innings that they're going to give versus Skubal's. Like, you're getting similar production. I don't know. It feels like we're really jumping Skubal up. I will say, in regard to the innings, he did have a season where he threw 154, or 150, so like he can do it. It's or 149. It's not. I don't think it's necessarily a workload issue for me. I just um it feels like we're putting a lot of projection on this guy off of 80 innings when you start looking around at and maybe this is because you and I look at it at such a granular level. Like, you look at it and like 3 bad starts takes you from a 2.8 to a 3.4. 2 more bad starts takes you at a 3.6. Like, did he not get found out enough to like get to those points? That he just so fresh that he never had a tired moment in there? Like, there's definitely some concerns that a few bad starts thrown in there kind of throws it off the rails, and it doesn't look quite like the same line. That being said, I love Tariq Skubal. So if he falls to be in the right position, I'm absolutely going to snatch him up. Just doesn't seem to be the case. Along with this next guy, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Last year, or you have projected for 156 innings, 13.5 record, 3.21 ERA, 104 WHIP, and 149 strikeouts. He's been in Japan, Gray. Obviously, he's never had a season that he threw over 50 innings that he had an ERA over 3. He's a sub-2 ERA in 4 of the last 5 years, a K rate over 9, a walk rate under 2, except for 2020, which is one season over 2 ERA, which was a granted, whopping 2.2 ERA. So he's pretty good, Gray.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing he's pretty good. I think I compared him in my rankings to George Kirby, but with more strikeouts. So yeah, I'm I'm a fan. I've gone the extra dollar because you know what? Gray likes fun. Gray also likes to talk in third person, but that's another story. Gray likes fun. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go the extra dollar for Yamamoto just so I can be in on it, so I can feel so I can feel something. I just want to feel something, man. And he's going to help me feel that thing. I hope. Yeah, I've drafted him in a couple leagues now because you know what? F it. I'm drafting him, bro. I'm going for it. I think it's been auction leagues mostly, but yeah, like in my 12 team mixed league labor that I drafted this past weekend in Florida, I grabbed Yamamoto for I believe $25. That's out of 260. Yeah, it's a good price, right?
Yeah, that's a great price for Yamamoto. Like you said, like in a stake draft, I don't get him. He goes like in the top 10, if not like the top 7 pitchers. I just never get him in a stake or in an auction. Yeah, I might actually go after him because you can price. There's more pricing there, so you can finagle things. It depends on when he gets put out in the auction. Like he's the first pitcher that gets thrown out. Forget about it. You're not gonna. I'm not. He's not gonna end up on my team. But like, if he's the 20th, 25th pitcher come out, I'm definitely going to be in on him, and I'm probably going to have him on my team. But it's just another like draft cost versus what expectations are. Any Japan pitcher, as good as they are, I expect to have some late season struggles because of the workload, the travel, and I just can't move him above a certain point, which is about where you have him, like in this 15 range. It's about where I have him, and just if he falls there, I'd love to have him. New tier here, number 16, Aaron Nola, 193 and 2/3 innings pitched, 12-9 record, 4.46 ERA, 115 WHIP, 202 strikeouts, 25.5% K rate, 5.7% walk rate. You have him down for 191 innings, 13 and 10 record, 377, 111, and 206 strikeouts. Maybe Aaron Nola just sucks in odd number years, Gray.
Yeah, the Saberhagen metrics would tell you that. I think that Aaron Nola. I'm out. By the way, I'm out on that Aaron Nola. I'm totally this tier. I'm out on these next few guys. So with Aaron Nola specifically, I think the home runs allowed is an absolute issue. It seems like it's an issue every other year though, so you might be okay. It's an even year coming up, so yeah, you might be okay. But I worry with him, like his strikeouts were down, his walks were up. So not only were the homers up, but the strikeouts and the walks, going in the reverse direction that you want them, not great. He just came off of like a 4.5 ERA, a 4.46, but for around 4.5 ERA after like in almost 200 innings. Like he killed people's seasons. God bless for the people who are back in on him after last year because I would not be back in on him. I'm not. I think there's a way for him to be successful. It could absolutely happen. We've seen it, we've seen it from him in the past. Like if you were to, say, if you were to come to me from the future and tell me that Aaron Nola just won the Cy Young, I wouldn't be totally shocked. Like he's on a good team. He could get to 20 wins. He could potentially fix his ERA with his home, if his homers allowed problem gets fixed. He does have solid strikeouts. Like the direction for him to be better is there. He's got to follow it though, and I'm not on board with seeing if it happens. Like I've said this in the past too. Like there's so many guys to draft. Like I was saying earlier, like Jose Luzardo is going at like 90 overall. I'm not going with Aaron Nola, who's going at 55 overall. It's just not going to happen. So I don't, if he does well, good for you if you drafted him. I would not be drafting him.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised you have him this high. I have him down in the 20s. I'm legitimately concerned about Nola. The velocity was down, which is my biggest concern over, the walks being up a little bit or the strikeouts being down or even the home run numbers because we've seen him fix those. The velocity being down is a big concern for me. There's I've always heard and it's been proven like there's a separator once you drop below 93. Like 93 is fast enough that you get away with some mistakes that you don't below that. Well, he dipped below, and for the first year since 2017, his max velocity wasn't over 96. It was 93.28. Like his max velocity was 93.28. That's concerning for me that he couldn't even reach back and find more at some point. Yeah, I'm concerned about Nola. He's gonna have to plummet in draft rooms for me to get him. I think I have him in maybe one where again he plummeted because nobody wanted him. And so at that point, maybe take the innings and just the amount of work he'll give you. But yeah, I'm definitely concerned here. Number 17 is Blake Snell. Last year had 180 innings, 14-9 record, 2.25 ERA, 1.19 WHIP, 234 strikeouts, which was a 31.5% K rate. Did have a 13.3% walk rate, not ideal. You have him down for 156 innings, 12-8, 3.74, 1.21, and 194 strikeouts. Other than the whip, he was amazing last year. Great, still a free agent somehow.
Yeah, as of the recording, he's still a free agent, so we'll see where he lands. But as I said with Aaron Nola, this tier, I'm out on this tier. I'm out on Blake Snell. No matter where he goes, if he was in his possible best spot last year to succeed, and he did succeed. He was good. But actually, if Aaron Nola is every other year, Blake Snell is Cy Young, and then 5 terrible years, Cy Young, 5 terrible years. So let's see, what is it? In 2029, I might be in on Blake Snell. We'll see. Check back then.
Yeah, I feel like you can be a little harsh on him. 2022 was only 128 innings, but it's pretty solid 128 innings. But yeah, I mean, Snell's always been a little up and down. I still think I would take his up and down and not having a team over Aaron Nola's bumming velocity and numbers dropping. But I completely get it. And with the inconsistency of Snell, the fact that he's not in camp yet is not exactly what you want to hear either. So I completely understand having Snell down in the rankings, at least comparatively to what he finished last year, which was amazing, obviously. I think it's probably his best year combined across the board. Next is number 18, Tyler Glasnow, 120 innings, 10-7 record, 3.53 ERA, 108 WHIP, 102 strikeouts, 33.4% K rate, 7.6% walk rate. You have him down for 131 innings, 11-7 record, 3.07 ERA, 104 WHIP, and 171 strikeouts. He threw his most ever innings in a season at 120, Gray.
I know. And people are still drafting him. Yeah, once again, I'm not drafting Tyler Glasnow. I don't think honestly, I'm not sure if I've been on Tyler Glass now for like 4 or 5 years now. And it hasn't really hurt me. I'm still waiting to get hurt.
Last year, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, last year, I don't know. Actually, now that I say that, I think I might have been in on him last year. But I mean, it hurt me a little bit, I guess. He threw 120 innings. Throw 150 innings and then, or at least throw 140. I mean, do something. Yeah, I just don't trust him for the innings. There's really nothing else. He's great when he's on the field. In a shallower league, I can understand drafting him more so than a deeper league, because there's so many guys to replace him with off of waivers. So in a shallow league, you grab him for 120 innings or 130 innings, whatever. You grab him for that, and then grab guys off of waivers for the other 50 or so innings. Yeah, it's doable. I'm not. It's just not the way I draft when it comes to starters. I appreciate how good Tyler Glasnow is, but I personally just don't draft starters like that. I stay away from guys who are like crazy high upside and crazy low, downside. I'm a little bit more conservative when it comes to starters. I would prefer, so many of the guys we talked about in the previous tier, and that's why I have him ranked above Glasnow.
I'm completely with you. I've always loved Tyler Glasnow as a pitcher. I would love to see him put up like 170 inning season just to see it because he's amazing. But I don't believe it's happening. I have him buried in my rankings to the point where I'm never gonna own him. I mean, I guess great if you had gotten to Tyler Glasnow and our next guy at 19, who is Max Fried. And then maybe I'll throw in Framber Valdez, who comes in at 20, and you're looking at these three guys. Everybody else on this above has been taken, so you can't say, "Oh, I take somebody above them." Would you potentially move Fried or Framber up your list because of the innings pitched limitations that you're looking at Glass now? If you're looking at this as like an SP1, or maybe you waited for your SP1, so he's like an SP1 and a half.
Would I move Fried or Valdez up?
Yeah, would you potentially do
No,
that in a like roster construction build, or would you
no,
just take
I
Glasnow?
wouldn't. I wouldn't draft Fried or Framber either. I don't like either pitcher. I
Sure,
don't like.
you're just like moving on and just drafting a bat at this
Yeah,
position.
but if you were to twist my arm and make me choose one of the three, I would choose Glasnow. I would choose how I have him ranked. But yeah, Framber. We'll talk about Framber when we get to him. Let's just move on.
Yeah, number 19, Max Fried. Last year, 77 and 2/3 innings, 8-1 record, 2.55 ERA, 1.13 WHIP, 80 strikeouts, 25.7% K rate, 5.8% walk rate. You have him down 454 innings, 12-3 record, 2.94 ERA, 1.10 WHIP, and 142 strikeouts. Had the forearm issue last year. Went on the 60-day. Came back, looked fine. Velo is fine. The movement may have changed a little bit, was very effective, and he's entering a free agent year. So I understand why you don't like him. You can talk about that. I love Max Fried still.
Yeah, no, Max Fried was probably like out of the top 20 at least. He might have been my hardest one to rank because I had him at one point. I had him as high as like 10 or 12 overall for starters. As a starter who I would actually draft because I really like his arm, his forearm was, his forearm strain that sidelined him for 3 months. Like that is really a concern. But he was back. He did, he came back and he looked great in the second half. So, that really was like the struggle because, everything else looked fine in the second half. So why not just assume he's fine? But at the end of the day, I just couldn't get past the fact that it was last year he missed, so much time with a forearm strain. So, I mean, unfortunately, I don't draft, I really try to avoid the like, starters who have like, anything in their most recent past. as far as injuries. Which hurts me to say because of Braxton Garrett, what's going on with him, which as of like the recording of this, we don't fully know. So, take that with a grain of salt. I'm not in the future with the people listening to this. But yeah, I mean, Max Fried looked great. I wanted to be in on him, but I couldn't be. There's too many other guys who, are quote unquote safe for me to go in on a guy who had a forearm strain. So yeah, I hear you though. Like my projections for him look really good too. Like I at the end of the day, I did his projections, and after I did his projections, I was like, oh, he's like a top 10 starter, isn't he? But then I just looked at the injury history and I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah, and that may have to do something with how you yourself put projections together. Like if I think Max Fried isn't going to give me 154 innings, I'll just knock that down. Like right now, I've blasted out probably for like 75 innings, which drops him down into the late 20s among pitchers. Um, and so like if my projections don't match up, I address those because there is some injury risk, and so you can certainly have better projections lower, but like Kevin Gausman has an existing issue. We don't know how serious it is, but we're going to drop Max Fried, 9, 10 spots because he had an issue last year. It's just, I guess I'm just a little more safe in Max Fried. I think he's fine. Number 20 is Framber Valdez. Last year, 198 innings pitched, 12-11 record, 3.45 ERA, 1.13 WHIP, 200 strikeouts, just under a 25% K rate, 7% walk rate. You have him down for 151 innings, 10-9 record, 3.57, 1.18, and 154 strikeouts. He was amazing in the first half where he had a 2.51 ERA, 105 WHIP. Second half, which included a really, really bad July, he had a 4.66 ERA with a 1.22 WHIP. In the first half, his feel was really nice. It was up from where he's always been. Second half, he dropped to his previous levels. Did have some ankle calf issues in July. It has been quoted many times as saying he lost his release point. So, do you believe in Framber Valdez bounce back? As you mentioned, it doesn't really sound like it, but of the three, potentially, maybe you believe in his bounce back.
No, I don't believe in Framber at all. I'm totally out on Framber. The people who are drafting Framber are like, I want their optimism.
Are you using Rudy's War Room?
They're using Rudy's War Room, or I just want their optimism in general. I don't know, man. I had Framber Valdez in a lot of leagues last year, and his second half just killed me. I can't go back in. I mean, like at the end of the day, these are my rankings. So, it may be as simple as like the guy burned me last year. And I don't, I mean, he was so awful in the second half. He was awful in the postseason. Like, he was not good. I get it that there was like, maybe a release point situation. That's what they're saying. And then you get into April and it's like, oh, actually, he's had, a shoulder issue for the last like 6 months. Like, who knows, man? I don't know, but I'm not in on Framber Valdez. It doesn't even matter to me, like, where he's going. I think he's going too early for other people who are in on him. I still think he's going too early, but, go with God, man. Good luck. It ain't going to be me, though.
I will say for like specifically Fried and Framberg, Glasnow's going like way early because people just project that he's not going to miss any time for some reason. But Fried and Framberg, like you have them at least among starting pitchers. We know your overalls probably drop in regards to versus standard ADP, but like 1920 is pretty much where Framber and Fried are going, but you're not drafting them. That feels like they should be lower than Gray.
Okay. I don't know. I don't
I'm
know
just
what to tell
saying,
you.
like,
Yeah. I don't know. That's where their projections came out for me at, and
Okay.
that's where. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
You're just very against drafting people who are right at ADP, basically. So I was just curious.
I
Next tier.
I don't. I have like it's like. I mean, it's like splitting hairs because I've already closed my top 20 stars because I thought we were moving on. But it's like splitting hairs because it's like Jose Luzardo, for instance, I have like, 40 picks before ADP. So obviously I'm drafting him. I have Framber Valdez at ADP, maybe a little bit later than ADP. So how am I getting past Luzardo and getting past Framber to get to Framber, who I don't even want? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. Like, I get this all the time from people. Like, oh, you have him like around ADP. It's like, okay, so who cares, dude? Who cares where I have him? If I have him at ADP, great. I wouldn't draft him though. I'm drafting like Logan Gilbert, Logan Webb, Jesus Luzardo, the guys we've gone over already. In a lot of cases, not everyone, but in a lot of cases, Freddie Peralta I have before his ADP. So if I'm taking, like, am I drafting 20 starters or am I drafting 2 starters in the top 100? Huh? Sorry, I'm getting like a
Well,
crazy old. I'm
get a
getting
little
like a crazy
defensive here,
Italian
Greg. Get a
guy.
little defensive. Just
I'm
letting
a,
you know that you basically
I
have
hear
them
this.
at ADP.
I hear it all the time though about like, oh, you have him. Like, how do you not draft him if you like? Easy. I'm not drafting him because I have starters already. I just like if Yamamoto is there, I'm taking Yamamoto. If Logan Gilbert's there, I'm taking Logan Gilbert. I'm not drafting Framber Valdez. I hate him. All right. You've broken me down. I don't know. Yeah,
I was
I'm
basically
just
just saying
I have
maybe they
I
could
have
be lower.
whatever the case is. I have Framber at 72, I think overall, and he's getting drafted at 62 overall. So I have him after, and he's going in some leagues. He's going in the top 40. So I mean, I'm just not drafting him, man. I'm just not. If you want him, you take him.
All right, fair enough. Moving on. Next tier here is 21. Zach Eflin, 177 and 2/3 innings pitched, 16-8 record, 3.50 ERA, 102 WHIP, 186 strikeouts, 26.5% K rate, 3.4% walk rate. You have him down for 178 innings, 12-7 record, 3.66 ERA, 106 WHIP, and 182 strikeouts. Tampa Bay does it again. It may be the one organization when they say we've taught him a new pitch that it is worth mentioning and paying attention to because he went with the cutter to work off the sinker instead of the four seamer, threw more curves, and Zach Eflin was amazing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think the Rays are one of those teams where it's like there's a few teams where it's like if the Rays are interested, or if the Mariners are interested, or if the Marlins are interested, like there's certain teams, like if a team is interested, then I'm interested. Like there's certain teams like that where it's like, and then there's the reverse where there's other teams where it's like if they're interested, then I'm putting on the brakes. Like the Pirates, for instance, even though I do like Mitch Keller, but there's certain teams that are, you have to take them with a grain of salt. Eflin, I think is, oddly enough, he was actually worse when he was on the Rays. But yeah, I mean, I like him. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Savalier. No, Eflin was better on the Rays. Yeah. I like Eflin a lot. I think he's probably he's going right now. Well, he's on my rankings at least at like where I had Logan Webb last year, and that's a solid comp. I think like Eflin could easily be, Logan Webb like going forward, like for this year at least. Like Like they're not really that different when you look at their, even their projections, really. Like they're kind of the same. Or like, Kirby too, like George Kirby. Like you look at Zach Eflin and George Kirby side by side, and it's like, are they really that different? Like Zach Eflin is really good, and he's going. I want to say he's going later. Yeah, he's going at like 85 overall. So yeah, you should be able to draft him in leagues. I like him. Also as far as ADP goes, like we should mention, we use NFBC's ADP, and that's kind of a skewed ADP. Like if you go to ESPN and you're drafting at ESPN, like you can probably get you can get like different starters than you can get at like NFBC. Uh like at ESPN, you might be able to get Scooble at like 60 overall. I don't know. I'm just saying it's like ADP differs from site to site. So, where guys are going, it's just giving you a sort of a ballpark idea of where guys are going. But Eflin, if he's going at like 90 and as like a number two, I'm I'm totally fine taking him as a number two.
Yeah, it feels like he's getting, pushed down draft boards a little bit because this is the breakout season. Want to see if he can do it again. Maybe some people have a little bit of Rays fear because if you drafted all the Rays pitchers last year, like I did, Eflin was the only one that stayed healthy for the full season, so that might have hurt you a little bit. But Zach Eflin looked great last year. There's no reason to think he can't continue to do what he did. Number 22 is Justin Steele, 173 in a third innings last year, 16-5 record, 306 ERA, 117 whip, 24.6 K rate, 5% walk rate. You have him down for 183 innings, 12-8 record, 3.56 ERA, 118 whip, 186 strikeouts. Maybe he was a little lucky, but like the numbers look in line. Like BABIP was same as 2022, left on base and home run fly ball were not out of the ordinary. But for some reason, all the projection systems seem to have him up at like a 3.7 to 4 guy. Certainly struggled a little bit down the stretch in September, as did every single player on the Chicago Cubs. I love this deal. I don't really understand why the ERA regression is so big for some people.
Yeah, I mean, we should be happy that the ERA regression is high for some people because it's really suppressing his ADP in a big way. Like I mentioned earlier, like some guys, like how fickle ERA is. I forget who I was talking about with that, but like how fickle ERA is. Like one bad start can change the whole guy's season. Like Justin Steele, I believe, I don't have his numbers in front of me, but I believe he had one start there in like September where it was like just awful. And it ruined his chances for a Cy Young. It ruined his ERA. Like he just had like one like really terrible start. And if you take that away, it's like his numbers look even better. But like his numbers still look good as far as the numbers we care about, right? Like, his K per nine, his walk per nine are great. He had 16 wins, a 306 ERA, and people are like, yeah, I don't want that. Like what? Like he just broke out, man. He just threw that in like almost just under 175 innings. Like he just had a great year. But for whatever reason, people want the shiny new toy of like Scooble or Cole Reagan's or something. Like they love shiny new toys, and it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, I wrote a sleeper post for Justin Steele last year. I loved him going into last year. I still like him a lot. I'm still drafting him. He's a really solid like. I mean, I'd be thrilled to have him as my number two on a team. Like he's a solid number two starter for fantasy.
And towards the end of the season, as you mentioned, there was 3 starts where the Cubs were basically A, making a push to the playoffs, but B, trying to get him into the Cy Young award, basically. And so they were throwing him what he had acknowledged he was a little tired. They did it at least once on short rest. And the short rest game is where he got lit up. It was 3 innings, 6 earned. It was a terrible inning, or game. If you remove those 3 starts, so the 3 they were really pushing him, one of which was at Atlanta, so you probably weren't starting him anyways. He had a 2.49 ERA across 160 innings, Gray. Like, what are we doing here?
Right? Like, what are we doing, man? Like, across a 2.49 ERA across 100 what? 100 what?
160 innings.
160 innings. A 2.49 ERA over 160 innings, and people are like, "Oh my God, did you see Tariq Scooble's 80 innings?" Like, oh, okay. Did you see Cole Reagan's 45 innings? Like, yeah, okay. I get it. I get it. Shiny new toy. Ooh, that's cool. But Justin Steele just did it, bro. He just did it, or he did what you're hoping to get from Cole Reagans. He just did what you're hoping to get from Scooble. Like, all right, but have fun, man. Enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, 24.6% K rate may not be as sexy as you could potentially get from Scooble or Reagan's, but like again, we're talking about a guy who's already done it across the full major league system or season, and just doesn't seem to be getting any respect for some reason. But again, that, like I said, that works for us because we're happy to have him. New tier here, 23 is Yuri Perez, 91 in the third innings last year, 5-6 record, 3.15 ERA, 1.13 WHIP, 108 strikeouts, 28.9% K, 8.3% walk. You have him down for 133 innings, 10-5 record, 307, 111, and 151 strikeouts. He did struggle in September, was pushing a career high in innings, throwing even harder this spring if you trust the guns at spring training. I love me some Yuri Perez. This is a guy I shop for in my SP2 range a lot.
Yeah, no, I love him too. I absolutely would draft Yuri Perez. Actually the fact that he's like right after Justin Steele in my rankings, shows you kind of why I was the number one ranker according to Fantasy Pros. Okay? So let's look at it. So Yuri Perez, who I love, I like him a lot, but he's going 30 picks in some drafts. 30 picks before, on average, he's going 20, but in some drafts, he's going 30 picks before Justin Steele, who we just discussed basically was the runner-up for Cy Young. Yuri Perez has thrown 91 career innings, 91 and a third. Okay. He didn't even, in those 91 innings, his ERA was not even as good as Justin Steele. Now, I get it. Strikeouts are sexy. Yuri Perez is sexy. I absolutely would draft Yuri Perez. So don't take it the wrong way when I say that. But, do you want to win your league? You do want to win your fantasy league? Or do you want the sexiest guys possible? I get it. I like sexy too. Like, don't get me wrong. There's a time and a place for sexy, though. Justin Steele, to me, is sexy. Yuri Perez is sexy. I just think Justin Steele's a little bit better. But you know what? Yuri Perez. I love Yuri Perez. I'm absolutely in on him. If he can throw 140 innings, I think he probably is going to have Tommy John surgery in 2025. But beyond that, like, he's probably a 130 inning guy. I like him though. I would absolutely, in a 12-team mixed league or shallower where you can replace him, when he gets shut down or whatever, or gets skipped because he has too many innings on his arm. He's probably a little bit better bet, but yeah, I like him. I would draft him.
Yeah, and I think we discussed this in the outfield when we got to a certain place in the rankings. You're like, I could just build my outfield out of this spot if you just give me like 5 picks in this like 20 range gap. I feel like that's kind of the area we're in for pitching. Like,
yeah, no, totally. Like and every year, totally. No, and every year it's like this too. Every year, like, you get to, like, I forget who they were necessarily last year, but every year you get to this point in the draft for starters, and it's like, grab 5 here, and just be done with it because these are all great starters. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to
Last
interrupt. Go
year
ahead.
it was Logan Webb, Max Fried, Jose Barrios. Dylan Cease didn't quite work out. But like then that's just in like that 70s range. Like I said, there's guys all the way down here. I mean, you can keep scrolling and keep Paulo Lopez at 135. It just keeps going in regards to pitching ADP. But yeah, like if you can sit in certain ranges, like there's great value to be had at pitching. You don't have to have a Strider. Um, so don't think that you have to. Moving on, 24, Sonny Gray. Last year had 184 innings, 8-8 record, 2.79 ERA, 1.15 WHIP, 183 strikeouts, 24.3% K, 7.3% walk rate. You have him down for 180 innings, 11-8 record, 3.21 ERA, 1.1 WHIP, 177 strikeouts. Outside of being 34, it seems like he feels really safe here, Gray.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I have moved him a little bit in the rankings since as of like 20 minutes before we record this podcast, I moved Sonny Gray, just because he's gonna miss a couple starts with a hamstring. I think he's gonna miss. I think he's probably gonna miss like 2 weeks of April. So he's not around for like, you know, the cold games in April. Big deal. It's not a big deal. I'm still drafting Sonny Gray. I think he's pretty safe. But I have moved him a little bit down. I think I moved him into like the 30s as far as starters go. But yeah, no, he's still solid. I still like him a lot. He's probably more now. He was a number 2 for me. Now he might be more of a number 3, but I would still draft him.
Yeah, I think you take the draft discount that you can get and probably be fine with it. So we'll see what happens with Sonny and keep an eye on that. It was just announced pretty much today as we're recording this on March 5th. So um, we'll see if any more news comes out and what the severity looks like. Number 25 is Joe Ryan, 161 and 2/3 innings last year, 11-10 record, 4.51 ERA, 1.17 WHIP, 197 strikeouts, 29.3% K, 5.1% walk. You have him down for 179 innings, 12-7 record, 3.62 ERA, 1.10 WHIP, and 202 strikeouts. Joe Ryan had an amazing first half. I'm not even gonna say man, a very strong first half, and then a very terrible second half. Greg, it seems like this is one guy that you are a bit higher than consensus on. What do you love in Joe Ryan?
Um, yeah, maybe I am higher. I thought I was around ADP, but yeah, I might be higher. I like Joe Ryan a lot. I think, if you just take away his ERA, like all his peripherals look great. Like, almost 11K per nine, under 2 walk per nine, just like nasty stuff. Like the Twins are another team. Like the Twins, like the Mariners, like they teach command at their earliest levels, and it pays off at the end because yeah, like Joe Ryan. I wrote a sleeper post for him last year. I've liked him now 2 years in a row. I thought I was a little bit higher on him than ADP, but even if I'm near ADP on him, I would definitely draft Joe Ryan. I think he's probably on the verge. Like he feels like he could be on the verge of like next year being a top 12 starter. Like he feels like he's gonna take the next step with like you mentioned the first half last year. Like he was like a top 5 starter for the first half, and then like he fell off dramatically. But that was like I believe it was homers allowed in the second half really started killing him. Maybe it was a little bit in the first half too, but there weren't men on maybe. But yeah, he has a homers allowed problem. Hopefully, with his command, like it's so odd to have it's sort of like Aaron Nola though in that respect. Like he allows homers even though he has great command, and it's like, well, if you have good command, don't throw the ball, where people hit home runs off of you. But, with all that said, I still like Joe Ryan. I think his price is really reasonable. I would take him as like a number 2 starter or a early number 3, maybe.
Yeah, I have no problem with Joe Ryan. The second half last year, it definitely concerns me. And maybe more so because I can't point to something and say, "Oh, this is what he did, and it was stupid and wrong, and like he needs to fix that." Like nothing really changed. He just started getting hit really hard for some reason. He had some kind of issue in August where they kind of sat him down and let him and regroup. Um, but I don't know. The second half definitely has me worried with the overall numbers. And even like the first half was good. It was definitely good, but like a 3.70 ERA is not, it's not sparkling. His April, May was amazing. He was up sub 3, both of those. I just don't know what happened the rest of the season to fall off so bad. So I think maybe just like a pitch mix thing with Joe Ryan. I like him. It sounds like you are higher on him than ADP, and I think where I have him as well. But I have no problems with him. I do think he has the upside to move forward. As you mentioned, strikeouts are great. He doesn't really walk a ton of people. The whip in the second half was really, really bad for some reason, despite the walks really not changing. So there's definitely some room for upside here. I just don't love Joe Ryan. Moving on to 27, Grayson Rodriguez, 122 innings last year, 7-4 record, 4.35 ERA, 1.34 whip, 25% K rate, 8.2% walk rate. You have him down for 161 innings, 11-6, 3.46 ERA, 1.19 whip, and 173 strikeouts. This is another guy that I absolutely love, but do not love him enough to get him in drafts, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's been a struggle too for me. I like Grayson Rodriguez a lot. I think going into last year, I loved him probably more so than most people, and it bit me in the first half. I still would draft Grayson Rodriguez, but I think I'm more realistic on him now. Whereas like if there's up and down like starts at all, like not up and down for majors to the minors like we saw last year with him, but just up and down like starts, just having a bad start here and there. I just don't know if he really gets to like he's at a 70 ADP and he feels I mean that feels a little bit high for where we're at with him. He could though. I mean you saw his second half. Like he could absolutely be a top 10 starter. Like that potential is there. Like I really believe like Grayson Rodriguez, I think you know I think there's going to be up and down moments this year, not as many as last year. And then next year, I think he's probably going to be like at least a top 15 starter off the board. Like he feels like he's taking a natural progression in the majors where he will be, he'll be an ace. He could be a top 5 starter, as soon as next year, really, but maybe 2025. So I really like him. I can't get fully behind him for ADP though, so I think I'm probably not going to be drafting him in a ton of places. Like maybe in an auction league if he happens to be there potentially. But I like him. I can't get fully there because of his first half.
Yeah, he definitely struggled when he got the first call up. So that was definitely a concern as you're looking at his numbers. Second half, as you mentioned, 76 innings, 2.58 ERA, 1.10 whip, 24% K rate, sub 7% walk rate. Actually finished throwing harder than he started the season. You like to see that, especially out of a young pitcher. So I love Grayson Rodriguez. He's going in the top 70. It's just a little rich for my blood most of the time, and I haven't even seen him get there. Like most of the drafts I'm in, he goes in the top 60 or 50 even. So, if you can get Grayson Rodriguez, absolutely love it. I think like barring, I don't really worry about his first half so much, but I think you're basically getting like Sonny Gray numbers as a baseline with potential to go up from there. And that's a pretty damn solid pitcher. Just not sure that the innings, and then like you said, there's some additional risk here. That may not come with some of the guys before, but love Grayson Rodriguez. Number 28 is Bobby Miller, 124 and a third innings last year, 11-4 record, 3.76 ERA, 1.10 WHIP, 119 strikeouts, 23.6% K rate, 6.3% walk rate. You have him down for 158 innings, 12-6 record, 3.61 ERA, 1.12 WHIP, and 162 strikeouts. Another guy who had a very solid second half. In 80 innings, he had a 3.36 ERA, 1.03 WHIP.
Yeah, I'm surprised at how higher everyone is on Bobby Miller than I really like these guys in this tier, but apparently there's people who are higher on them than I am. Not again, that is NFBC versus like Yahoo or ESPN. I think if you go to Yahoo or ESPN, where most people play, these guys are not ranked as high, not ranked necessarily, but ADP isn't as high. So, right now for me, I like Bobby Miller a ton. People like him even more. Like people are loving Bobby Miller. Like I don't even know necessarily what they're expecting. Like I like him. I like Bobby Miller. Like let's look at something. Hold on. Sorry. I'm looking Bobby Miller. Yeah, so Bobby Miller went for in the draft, in the labor draft I just took part in. He went for $2 more than Max Fried. Huh? I mean, I like him. Again, I like Bobby Miller. And I don't like Max Fried. But even I would say like Max Fried's a better pitcher than Bobby Miller, right? I mean, at this point, and I don't really love Max Fried. Now, I don't love Aaron Nola either, but Bobby Miller went for the same price as Aaron Nola. I don't know, man. It's like I can't get, and that's $18. Bobby Miller went for $18 out of 260. So yeah, people like Bobby Miller more than me. I like him. I don't know. I think I just can't get fully there for a few of these guys who are going to be like, the Dodgers have already said they're going to probably go to a 6-man rotation at points, which, I mean, that's going to hurt his innings. It'll hurt all the Dodgers. I mean, including like Yamamoto. So, that is what it is. But Bobby Miller's are only thrown 124 in the third and won a third inning last year. This year, you're looking at probably 145, maybe. The Dodgers are assuming they're going to go into the playoffs, so they're going to really baby guys at the end of the season. So, that could hurt his innings. When push comes to shove, I like Bobby Miller. I think other people might like him a tad bit more, though. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at both of our pitcher rankings, I don't think we're that far off. I think it's just in the overall where, you get like Grayson, Bobby Miller, Yuri Perez, and like they all go within 5 to 10 picks of each other. And so you're kind of stuck where like, okay, but I like Grayson more, I like Yuri more, so I don't end up with Bobby Miller. And on top of
that, sorry, not to interrupt, but like Bobby Miller, sorry, not to interrupt, but like Bobby Miller is at 75 ADP. I just said before, Justin Steele is at 105. 30 picks? Justin Steele's 30 picks worse than Bobby Miller? Really? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And I know Bobby Miller has had high K rates in the minors, but like you're still waiting for that to transfer over. Like the only thing Justin Steele doesn't do is strikeout. So literally you're just like, oh, Bobby Miller's going to magically be a 30% K rate guy, which by the way, that could happen. It's not out of the range of possibilities, but that's basically what you're saying when you take Bobby Miller, who's on restricted innings, over Justin Steele, who's not, and had a higher K rate last year. There's some
dude. I hate to be, I'm obviously I'm not the Cubs fan on this podcast. There is a Cubs fan on this podcast. It's not me. But, I mean, Justin Steele's like the best Steele ever. Is he? Isn't he? I mean, he is. He's the Steele. It's in his name.
Yeah, I think people think like Justin Steele is like a 6% strikeout guy for some reason, and just doesn't strike anybody out. I don't know where he gets this from.
We are doing the we are putting the Razzball Podcast jinx on Justin Steele as we speak.
Completely. That's all right. Moving on. We're getting along already. We're still trying to get through like 10 more. Number 29, Tanner Bibby. I love Tanner Bibby. Last year, 142 innings, 10-4 record, 2.98 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 24% K rate, 7.7% walk rate. You have him down for 159 innings, 11-7 record, 3.49, 1.16, and 162 strikeouts. Sierra, xFIP don't like him. FIP does. You do with what you want. He was a 2.98 ERA guy last year. Projection systems have him 3.8 to 4.2. I love Tanner, and I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, I love Tanner too. He feels like it's like the Logan Webb, George Kirby's of the like Tanner Beebe. Oh, the Guardians too. The Guardians are a good they're good for pitching too. So Tanner Beebe, like, he's in that mold of like he's not gonna blow you away with strikeouts, but his command is excellent. It's like last year his command was only 2.9 walk per nine, but his command's going to get better. He was a really he was a great command guy in the minors. He's always been a great command guy. I think he's like super safe. Like if push came to shove and you're working ADP into the conversation and you're like Bobby Miller or Tanner, probably going to be more valuable, guys. I'm sorry. I know that hurts to hear. People don't want to hear that because everyone loves the shiny new toy. I don't know why, but like Tanner Beebe's going 40 to 50 picks after Bobby Miller. He's probably going to be more valuable. I mean, he probably is. It's like at the end of the day, Tanner Beebe is going to give you more innings, so he's going to have more chances for wins. I know the Dodgers are a better team than the Guardians, but still, he's going to give you probably an extra 30 innings, 20 to 30 innings. He's going to give you probably better ratios. He's not going to give you better Ks, but I mean, come on, just pick up a good middle reliever. I mean, you guys, like the people listening to this podcast, you know how to play fantasy, right? Like, I mean, it's like this is not beginner stuff here. Like Tanner Beebe versus Bobby Miller, when you include Bobby Miller's going for 50 picks before him, like, come on, guys. Like, what are we doing here? Are we just like shiny new toys that much? It doesn't make any sense, man.
I'm going to say Tanner Bibby might be my most exposed player across all my leagues. I don't know if I've done a draft where I don't have him on my team. And I think, like, if you want to say the K, I think this is what people say, like, the Ks weren't impressive last year. Like, so he's been a 30% K rate guy in the minors. He's not going to improve his K rate, but Bobby Miller is going to jump into a 30% K rate magically. Like, where does this come from? Okay. We'll move on. I'm stopping about it. Number 30, Mitch Keller. 142 innings last year, 10-4 record, 2.98 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 141 strikeouts, 24.1% K, 7.7% walk. You have him down for 191 innings, 12-8 record, 3.77 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 208 strikeouts. Missed some time early and missed some time late, but when he was on the field, he was really good last year. Kind of had that preseason buzz. I've owned Mitch Keller on every team for it feels like the last 25 years, and it finally paid. It finally paid.
Yeah, no, completely. And also, I think it's going to keep paying off. Like he's another guy where like you're looking at Mitch Keller, his ADP is 170. Like that's nuts. That's crazy. Okay, like Mitch Keller's ADP was 170. Okay, he was the 30th best pitcher on the player rater last year, and he was 105th overall on the player rater. So he was already a top 30 starter last year. He already did it. Like he's done it. Done. And he's going 100 picks after Bobby Miller. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Hold on a second. You guys, like, seriously, I get it. You like the upside, but come on, man. Like, do you also like winning leagues? Or do you like going like by Scooble has added an extra mile on his fastball. Okay, great. That's super. I'm glad you're excited about that. But on the other hand, do you want to win a fantasy league? Would you like to do that maybe instead? Okay. Anyway, I like Mitch Keller a lot.
I always have, always will. Number 31, which starts a new tier, is Walker Buehler. Obviously didn't have stats for 2023, and it's almost irrelevant to run back the stats that he had before that because you know how good he was before. Second TJ, though, that's really the question here. Do you believe in life after the second TJ, Gray?
That sounded like a Natalie Merchant lyric. Do you believe in life? Do you believe in life after a second TJ? I don't believe in life after a second TJ. No, I do. I mean, I hope he's okay. I'm not drafting Walker Buehler. Begins a new tier of guys where I'm not drafting them. I don't care where they are. Let's get that out of the way. I don't care where his ADP is. I'm not drafting him. Yeah, I just worry, like, he's probably, like, I don't know where, like, the Dodgers, like I said already, the Dodgers are going to go to a six-man, probably for the majority of the season. I think Walker Buehler's probably, like, I think he might be or a week, well, 2 weeks to a month away from even being in the rotation. I think they're slow rolling him, which is, I mean, honestly, it's fine because they're slow rolling like four pitchers, which is fine because they're expected to be going deep into the playoffs, so they want to make sure they prefer to have Walker Buehler ready for October than April. That makes sense. I have no problem with that. It makes total sense, and I don't mind Walker Buehler in general. Hopefully he's okay, but I'm not drafting him. I'm not drafting a guy coming back from his second TJ. I mean, good luck. I hope he's great, but it's not going to be on my teams.
Yeah, I mean, if he falls to a ridiculous point in drafts, I could definitely see where you would take the shot on him. Um, it has to be an upside play though. Like you can't count on anything from him. So just know what you're getting into there. 32 is Dylan Cease. Last year had 177 innings, 7-9 record, 4.58 ERA, 1.42 WHIP, 214 strikeouts, 27.3% K rate, 10.1% walk rate. You have him down for 179 innings, 12-10 record, 3.89, 1.33, and 222 strikeouts. I mean, Cease was a guy that was drafted very highly last year by people, including myself, and it was awful. He had his worst home run fly ball. Swing and strike rate was down. Left on base was his worst since 2019, which was a terrible year. In his rookie year, he says he's figured out his issue, but at this point, Gray, if you look at his numbers, is 2022 the outlier and not what we should expect?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at his numbers, like 2022, like it looks like he was possibly super lucky. Like if you look at his ERA, he had a 2.20 ERA in 2022, and like he had a BABIP of 260, And every other full season, his BABIP's been over 300. He's probably he might be closer to like a 290 BABIP guy. I don't know. He's just so. I mean, he just feels like a crazy upside pick. I can't get in on Dylan Cease either. I'm out on him. I might be Dylan Cease to me, like unless they change the pitch clock rules and get rid of them, which they're not doing. Dylan Cease to me feels like a guy of like a bygone era where like I could have seen like Dylan Cease being even after that awful year he just put up, I could see Dylan Cease being like a top 10 starter like prior to the pitch clock rules. Like he still has great Ks, and that was the kind of thing I was all about before the pitch clock. But now he's got a 4+ walk per nine. I'm out on a 4+ walk per nine. I can't mess with that. Like he's not he feels like a guy who like would have been a top 20 starter for like many years prior to last year. Like if you go back to like 2018 and you put his stats even from last year, even when he had a 4.58 ERA. If this was 2018, I'd be like, yeah, but he's got like an 11 K per nine. Let's go. Let's go. But now with the pitch clock rules, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's velocity. Like he lost from April to May last year. He lost 2 miles an hour velocity. I don't know what happened. They didn't say it was necessarily an injury. I'm willing to take a chance based on the upside here. And the fact that the reports coming out of spring are that he's hitting 97, which is where he sat before, that gives me hope. So I'm willing to take the chance, but I'm not overly reaching for him. If I don't get him, that's not the end of the world. I'm still taking Tanner Bibby over him, and they're going essentially in the same spot. So, that's where I'm at on Cease. If he falls, fine. If not, fine too. 33, Hunter Greene, 112 innings last year, 4-7 record, 4.8 ERA, 1.42 WHIP, 152 strikeouts, 30.5% K rate, 9.6% walk rate. You own down for 152 innings, 9-12 record, 3.9 ERA, 1.36 WHIP, and 196 strikeouts. I had a lot of offers for him last year in Dynasty. Seems like I maybe should have pulled the trigger on those, Gray, but the stuff is so nasty still. Like I still believe in him. I just don't know. I don't know when it's gonna come together.
I think, yeah, Hunter Greene is actually a lot like Dylan Cease, whereas, like, if it was 2018, I'd be all about Hunter Greene. I'd be like, who cares that he walks a lot of guys? I don't care. Let's go. He's got strikeouts. Let's do it. I will say with Hunter Greene, and also Hunter Greene, similar to Dylan Cease, I will say this for Hunter Greene is, like, he probably will have one of those years like Dylan Cease had in 2022. Like Hunter Greene's absolutely going to have like a year where it's like 250 strikeouts, 2.5 ERA, and just be ridiculous. And he's going to have like a low BABIP, and he's going to leave a lot of men on base. He's still going to have bad command, but he's going to be able to, like unless his command gets better. I mean, it could happen. He's still young. He's only going into his third year in the league. It's all possible. But he feels like a guy who will have a great year one of these years. But it's just you're just rolling the dice with Hunter Greene. Like no one has any idea what they're going to get from Hunter Greene, and last year shows that. Like you could get an absolutely stellar year from him with a ton of strikeouts. Or you could get a year where you're like, am I starting him at home? His park isn't good. He gives up a lot of home runs. He walks everyone. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like Hunter Greene is the reincarnation of Mitch Keller. Like he's gonna get good eventually, but who knows when? Who knows what triggers it? But he's gonna be good. Like it's gonna happen, or he'll get moved to the bullpen where he's gonna be elite. Like one of those two things is gonna happen with Hunter Greene. I just don't know when. Number 34 is Joe Musgrove, 97 and a third innings pitched, 10 and 3 record, 305 ERA, 114 whip, 97 strikeouts, 24.3% K rate, 5.3% walk rate. You have him down for 141 innings, 8 and 7 record, 383 ERA, 116 whip, and 143 strikeouts. I guess one way to not flop in the second half is to just not pitch in the second half, Gray.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. I mean, I like Joe Musgrove in general, and this late, he feels kind of like a steal this late, but also, I mean, he was shut down on August 4th with the shoulder capsule inflammation. I mean, I don't know. I don't even, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. It's just like, it's added complication that I'm not drafting Joe Musgrove. Like, if you get him and he's healthy this year, you're probably going to get a good year. He's always been good when he's healthy, but is he healthy? Well, I don't know. I'm not messing with him though.
Yeah, I mean, it completely depends. He's one of those guys, like, I've seen him go, as early as like the 5th round, and I've seen him go as late as like the 8th or 9th round. Like, he is definitely one of those, what room are you sitting in guys? And for the most part, I'm not getting him unless he falls to that back end where like he's going in the 8th or 9th round. Like, if he's going around like Merrill Kelly, like, that's fine. If he's going around Justin Steele, we already know which way we're going in that direction. Or, Yuri Perez or any of those guys. Like, we know which way we're going already in that direction. I was never a huge Joe Musgrove fan, but at the right cost, I've been in on him this year at times. And then I've also laughed because he goes so early. So it just depends on your league. Number 35, Cole Reagans, 96 innings last year, 7 and 5. 3.47 ERA, 116 whip, 113 strikeouts, 28.8% K rate, 10.5% walk rate. You have him down for 143 innings, 8 and 11 record, 3.85 ERA, 122 whip, and 159 strikeouts. It's funny because at the end of last year, we were talking about Reagan, and I was like, hey, nobody's going to notice what he's doing because it's the end of the year. I'm going to own him everywhere. So far, Gray, I have zero shares. I'm a very sad panda.
Yeah, Cole Reagan's funny you say that because Cole Reagan's in like the fall of last year. I feel like there was a moment where like you and I both were really all about Cole Reagan's. Like I like Cole Reagan's in theory. Like in theory, I like him.
No, I love him. I do.
In reality, or actually, I should say in fantasy, he's going so early. I mean, he's going so like early. He's going at like around the same spot as like, Jesus Luzardo. I mean, and that's like, and that's he's going before Jesus Luzardo. I mean, he's going before like so many guys. I mean, he's going before Bobby Miller. He's going so early. Like
honestly, how early he's going.
Yeah. Like Cole Reagan's was actually in the draft I was talking about with my labor draft, 12-team mixed league. Cole Reagan's went at $21. $21. If you remember correctly, he went for $3 more than Aaron Nola. I don't like Aaron Nola, but come on, bro. Come on, man. He went for $3 more than Max Fried. I mean, come on, man. He went for $1 more than Logan Webb. Guys, come on. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just like you're so caught up in the hype. You don't even see the trees anymore, man. You're running full steam ahead, going ahead. Whoa, you're in a forest of hype. And you're smacking your head into a giant tree. Like, you're like so lost. You don't know what you're doing when it comes to fantasy baseball. You honestly, if you're into Cole Reagan's, great. I hope he does well. Like, I got nothing against him personally. It doesn't hurt me in the least if Cole Reagan's has a great year and he breaks out. But even in his breakout last year, he had months where it just went all to crap. Like and that one of those months was September. So his last month of the season, he had a near 5K per nine. His walk percentage was 13.2%. I mean his K's minus walk percentage was 14%. I mean, come on, man. Like it's just like his command can get so wonky that even if he's great this year, he's still gonna have starts where it's like, ouch, what happened there? And then you're gonna be like, huh, Cole Reagan just gave up 6 walks in his last start. Should I start him next time? And then you're going to bench him and he's going to have a great start. So then you're going to be like, nah, you know what? I'm going to start him again. And then he's going to go out and throw 8 walks in 4 innings and give up 12 runs. And you're going to be like, what happened? What happened to my team? So, yeah, I mean, I like Cole Reagan's in theory, but it's not happening in fantasy for me this year.
Yeah, I like Cole Reagan's. I like him more than where you have him, and I'm still nowhere near getting him. I was in a draft last night, Gray. I was sitting there in the 5th round, and I'm like, you know what? Instead of taking Logan Gilbert, who I have as a top 10 starting pitcher in my rankings, I just want to even have a share of Cole Reagan's. I'm going to take him over Logan Gilbert, again, top 10 starting pitcher in my rankings. I didn't even get the chance, Gray. Cole Reagan's went before then. It's getting ridiculous how early he goes in drafts. Like, you're literally just taking him to say you own him if you're taking him. That you can't possibly project out to a number that makes him worth this value. And I love him.
Yeah, he's overvalued. Right. Yeah.
Number 36, Kodai Senga. Last year had 166 innings, 12-7 record, 2.98 ERA, 1.22 WHIP, 202 strikeouts, 29% K rate, 11% walk rate. You have projected for 119 innings, 95 record, 3.63 ERA, 1.24 WHIP, and 129 strikeouts. Had a moderate posterior capsule strain in his right shoulder last year, to which he had a PRP injection at the end of February for. They've already said he's likely to miss at least a month. I was going to own him everywhere, Gray, across the board as my SP1, and then the shoulder issue came up, and now I'm not going to own him.
Yeah, no, completely. I think I had him at like around the 14th starter for me, and now he's like the 34th or whatever, or you're going off of I moved Braxton Garrett too. But anyway, the numbers don't matter. Kodai Senga I liked a lot, but now he's off the board for me. I'm not drafting him. I mean, I placed him where I did in the rankings, but it doesn't matter. I wouldn't draft him. I mean, if you want to draft him, you're basically putting him in the IL slot until I would say until mid-May, probably. I mean, I have him down still for like 119 innings. I mean, that might even be optimistic. I don't know. We'll see what happens with him, but I'm not drafting him.
Yeah, I would say I think he comes back early enough to reach said 119. I don't know that he stays healthy for said 119, and that's the issue with Senga. I think you're right in regards to, you probably just don't own him. I think I have him down in the 40s range. So there's still some value to take at the upside risk here if that's what you're looking at, especially in shallower leagues. But in general, probably just not going to be worth drafting. Grab him when he gets healthy or wait for it. In head-to-head leagues, maybe a little bit more optimistic in grabbing him just because of the head-to-head and the playoff format of that. Moving on, number 37, which starts a new tier, is Chris Bassett. Last year, he threw 200 innings, 16-8 record, 3.60 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 186 strikeouts, 22.5% K rate, 7.1% walk rate. You have him down for 186 innings, 13.9 record, 3.67 ERA, 1.15 WHIP, and 171 strikeouts. I mean, just the most boring and yet consistent guy on the list, I think.
Yeah, I Honestly, I think he was ranked almost identical spot last year for me. Like he is such a steady number three. I actually really like Chris Bassett when it comes to fantasy. Like he is he's not flashy in any way, but he gives you good innings, keeps you sort of in the game for wins, solid ratios, okay, good enough strikeouts, like not flashy at all, but solid. I like Chris Bassett a lot. I tend to draft him as number three. Because also, like, you have to think, like, when you're skipping the top starters and you're not drafting a starter until like 50 overall, so your number one starter isn't gonna look as good, as maybe other people's. So you have to go a little bit safer. And Chris Bassett works right into my game plan. So I like Chris Bassett a lot.
Yeah, there's certainly some guys as we're kind of past the top pitchers. I would say like, we've gone past that point. We're now in more of the supporting or taking your chance on guys. And within that realm is guys that if you're like us, you take because they're consistent, they're going to give you innings, and sometimes you have to bank some of that to build out your roster rather than taking the high upside short inning guys because you waited to grab your ace. So yeah, there's some roster construction here as well. Bassett is perfectly fine. I like him more in like 15 team or only leagues, but he certainly still has value in 12 teamers. Number 38 is Justin Verlander. Last year had 162 innings, 13-8 record, 3.22 ERA, 1.13 WHIP, 144 strikeouts, which is a 21.5% K rate, 6.7% walk rate. You have him down for 158 innings, 13-6 record, 3.42 ERA, 1.15 WHIP, and 139 strikeouts. Has shoulder issues. The velo continues to drop, even though he's still throwing above league average. Dropped for him, and the K rate has plummeted the last couple of years. Greg, can any of that bounce back? Does it matter?
No. Yeah, that's a good no, and exactly what you said. It doesn't matter. Like, he's probably gonna miss like a couple weeks in April, and it doesn't matter. Like, I don't like until we see Justin Verlander not be like, good. Like, again, like he had some issues there for in his early 30s, but for a while now he's been so good. Like, he was 75th on the player rater last year. He was the 23rd best starter last year. I would say, like, until he's like not good, just draft him. Like, he feels safe. Like, and if he's out for like a couple weeks in April, it's fine. I mean, I honestly, like, they're saying shoulder soreness, but I feel like with him, they're just like, they know he's only going to throw 150 innings, so it's like, why rush him out there and have him throw in April? Like, what is that going to do for us? So I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think Justin Verlander's fine. Like, to draft at where he's going, that is. Like, I'm not saying like, he's a strong number one. He's not that anymore, but I think he's okay as like a number 3 to 4 starter at like, at like 175 overall or something. Like, yeah, take him, draft him. I don't know. He feels to me like he's, right now he's at 155 overall on ADP, but that's including, some weeks where he didn't have any injury issues or concerns, I should say. So yeah, I mean, now he's probably going to be going at like 200 overall. I would draft him. Absolutely. I have no problem with Justin Verlander. Maybe I'm crazy, but I mean, he seems like 150 innings of like fairly safe ratios, good chance for wins, and his Ks have come down over the years, but that's fine.
And I think that Verlander had something very similar to this last year. And again, whether it's a real injury, whether it's, hey, you're over 40, we're just gonna not pitch you for the first month. Um, you know, he did struggle that first month. So this is what I'll say: draft Verlander, stick him on your IL, leave him there until we get some semblance that he's back. Because after his first month, he was a 2.86 ERA over 132 innings, Gray. So after that first little month where he had some hiccups, one of which was at Colorado, where you're not starting him anyways, like 2.86 ERA from there on out, really, really just fine. Probably not getting the strikeouts he used to, not going to get the total innings, but 140 innings of solid ball is very much within his range. Number 39 is Eduardo Rodriguez, 152 and 2/3 innings, 13-9 record, 3.30 ERA, 1.15 WHIP, 143 strikeouts, 23% K rate, 7.7% walk rate. You have him down for 164 innings, 13-8 record, 3.71 ERA, 1.17 WHIP, and 156 strikeouts. Another guy kind of in the Verlander mold, minus the fact that you have to deal with an injury out of the gate. Like, just a guy who's going to give you some solid innings across the board.
Yeah, exactly. Another guy who's like not flashy, but do you want to win your fantasy league? Or would you prefer flashy? I mean, I like Eduardo Rodriguez a lot. I think he's really undervalued. I have probably a good 30 to 40 picks before ADP. His ADP right now is like 190. They're drafting him like he's a number 4. I think he's a solid number 3. I got no problem with Eduardo Rodriguez. And plus, he's on a better team in theory, so he should potentially get more wins. He's a no-brainer for me. Like, I absolutely like Chris Bassett, Justin Verlander, Eduardo Rodriguez. The next guy, Jordan Montgomery, who isn't signed yet as of the recording of this. They're like those 4 guys. Like, I mean, you draft one of them for the middle of your fantasy staff just to get some safe innings, please, just please.
Yeah, and Eduardo's an innings eater. He'll give you that 150, 160 innings. He has thrown 200 in his career at one season. I don't necessarily think he's doing that, but 150, 160, very solid innings. Don't necessarily think he's going to give you another 3.30, but 3.6, 3.7 is perfectly fine, and that's where you have projected for. Number 40 is Jordan Montgomery, 188 and 2/3 innings last year, 10-11 record, 3.20 ERA, 1.19 WHIP, 166 strikeouts, 21.4 K rate, 6% walk rate. Still a free agent, but with the Giolito news, I wonder if Jay Monty is heading toward Boston.
Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't. I mean, I think Jordan Montgomery is like, I haven't projected him yet in the rankings because he hasn't signed yet. So I've been waiting until he signs to see where he goes to project him. But I probably, if honestly, I could probably just project Jordan Montgomery right now because he is exactly who he is no matter where he's playing. He was who he was when he was in New York as a Yankee. He was the same in St. Louis. I mean, he's just been the same everywhere he goes. So, I mean, is he exciting? No, he's not. He's not Cole Reagans. Will he be actually more valuable? Probably. Probably more valuable. I mean, he's like Chris Bassett, part 2. Like, he's exactly like 8-ish, 7.8 to 8.1 K per 9, 2-ish walk per 9, 3.4-ish ERA. It's what he does. That's what he does. Everywhere he goes. Everywhere he goes.
And I love me some Jordan Montgomery, just chronically undervalued for whatever reason. Um, and then if we're just going off the player rater, which I understand is not the end all, but Jordan Montgomery, 33 last year. Cole Reagan, 64, and it was not on a dollar per game basis. Jordan Montgomery beat the crap out of Cole Reagan's on a dollar per game basis too. So there is that. Of course, Reagan's had some struggles, but just throwing it out there that there's value to be had. Number 41, which I think is going to be the end of it for today, Gray, is Merrill Kelly, 177 and 2/3 innings, 12-8 record, 3.29 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 186 strikeouts, or 187 strikeouts, sorry, 25.9% K rate, 9.6% walk rate. You have him down 474 innings, 13-6 record, 3.64 ERA, 1.16 WHIP, and 170 strikeouts. It feels like he's an old pitcher without being an old pitcher.
Yeah, no, completely.
I guess he is an old pitcher. I lied. He is old. He just hasn't been around that long.
Yeah. I mean, he is 35. He was in Korea for a while. He's another one like Merrill Kelly. Like, I'm not saying draft only in this tier. Like, I'm not crazy here. I don't want you to draft Chris Bassett, Jordan Montgomery, and Merrill Kelly all on the same team. But again, when you're drafting a guy like, say, Yuri Perez or Bobby Miller, you need a guy like Merrill Kelly just to like give you some safe innings. And Merrill Kelly does it year in and year out. Safe innings. Like he might even be safer than like Justin Verlander at this point in his career. I don't know. But they're all in the same tier for me. Like I like this tier a lot as a number. Like they're not my aces. Again, they are a solid 3 to 4 starter, fantasy starter. I like him a lot. I like Merrill Kelly. He's he even upped his strikeouts last year, which I wouldn't necessarily count on again, but you never know. I would say Merrill Kelly is a good bet for like a 3.5 ERA. 8-ish K per nine, and who knows on walks? We'll see. I mean, excuse me, on wins. We'll see on wins. Maybe he's a 12 to 15 win guy. Maybe he's a 10 win guy. That's out of his control, and it's out of my control, man. Sorry.
Yeah, and it does seem like nobody is giving him, at least in regards to projection systems, nobody's giving him credit really for the strikeout boost last year. But if you look at the last 3 years that he's had in Arizona, the K percentage has gone up like 3% each year. The swinging strike rate has climbed every year, and it took like a 2.3% bump last year. So I don't understand why he would drop back down to like a 20% K guy. He may not be a 26%, but dropping him back down to like a 20, 21 seems to ignore everything he's done since coming back to the States and kind of developing himself as a major league pitcher. So yeah, I think there's a non-zero chance the K's are better than what you expect from him. And I would say like him and Monty, and then, like you said, this whole tier is really good pieces to have on your staff. Grab one, maybe two if you're more risking. If you're grabbing like Glass now up top, and then you've got some bank stats that you can just count on. All right, great. We have done a long time on pitchers here. We'll be back to do as many as we can get through in the second half. We won't have the lead in, so we'll get through a few more next time. But if you have specific questions, and we know we're getting draft season, come find us on Twitter. I'm at RazBeaton. Gray's the owner of the @Razzball account. You can leave them in comments underneath youtube.com/Razzball Fantasy, where we post the podcast videos. You can make comments on razzball.com. Any other way that you can get in contact with us, just whatever. Great. Until we get back for Starting Pitchers Part 2, this was a lovely 2-hour and 50-minute podcast.
All right, Lades.
I agree.